I've got
Thank you.
4:30.
I think we're all here and it's 4:30, so let's call our meeting to order.
All right. Do you want to do the roll call?
Yes, please.
All right, roll call. Vice President Diamond.
Here.
Director Hetherington.
Yes.
President Odette.
Here.
Director Rolfe.
Here.
Director Stevens.
Here.
Okay, this is our special meeting. Agenda, COVID-19 relief funds, California Special Districts request.
Perfect.
Who's
So
got
maybe
the
I'll
floor?
just give it a quick, I'll be really brief. For any of those that are tuning in, this item was added yesterday. It was unknown to us before we posted our agenda, and we only meet once a month, so it was important to be able to list this as an agenda item, so if the board wanted to take action, they could. And so with that, we'll maybe give Dane a little bit of time to explain what he's hoping we'll do.
Sure. Well, thank you so much. Good afternoon, board members, staff, public, if public members are on there. Dane Wadley, I'm the CSDA field coordinator for Nevada County for your guys' area. Hope you've seen me up there before, doing some presentations at the district board meetings, and just wanted to come back and talk a little bit about a kind of a call to action that we have going right now federally through two bills, HR 535 and S91, to secure COVID relief funds specifically for special districts. Now, of course, you guys are in a little bit unique situation in that airports, of course, received funding previously from the previous CARES Act measures passed last year. There's also, of course, money in the current kind of proposal to provide some additional funds to airports. So I guess at the risk of sounding greedy, asking you guys to support CSDA's efforts as well to secure some funding specifically for special districts. And the way that we would do that is that we would say, our bills say that any future allocation to the coronavirus relief fund from the federal government that goes to the state, 5% of that would have to go specifically to special districts. So, you know, again, the special districts, with the exception of certain ones like you guys, have been kind of left out of the efforts last year and the kind of the current proposal right now. So we're trying to get our language inserted into the final package, which, as I said, would kind of carve out a portion of the state's money that may go to the state for special districts to address the COVID impacts that they've had. Our water folks, right? Parks and Rec is a big one. Fire districts as well, you know, just down the line. So again, you know, if you're so inclined, obviously I'd appreciate a you know, letter of support or kind of joining our coalition here. It's as you may already be aware, it's pretty much crunch time right now for this type of action, as the the discussions are ongoing in Congress. The bill passed out of the House and can be considered by the Senate, and so it's moving along quite quickly. So appreciate the opportunity to give you the update, and happy to answer any questions.
I have a question. If you are successful and you get this money, who gets the money and who decides where it's distributed?
Right. So right now, as I said, we would take 5% of the state's, any money that goes to the state. They would have to pass 5% along to special districts. And from there, you know, you basically have to demonstrate, a district would have to demonstrate that they've had new COVID expenses or revenue loss, et cetera. There's some provisions in the bill that kind of outline that. Now, past that, how it's all going to shake out, to your direct question of, well, okay, well, who's going to get it and how's it going to be dispersed? Admittedly, it's still a little bit up in the air right now. And we've been working with the state, the governor's office, Department of Finance for, well, multiple months to try to, you know, start talking about these issues like, hey, if this happens, you know, these are the needs and here's how we can, you know, potentially do this. So long and short of it, it hasn't been totally established, but it would come from the state. And, you know, we're basically just trying to secure money specifically for districts right now because it hasn't happened.
So the funding would come to the CSDA and the CSDA would distribute it?
No, like the state of California. Tonight, probably it'd be up to, require a bill from the legislature, the state legislature, approved by the governor, that, or some sort of action, how that, through that process.
And I would assume somewhat like the PPP loans, only those who receive funds would have to pay it back or demonstrate that it should be waived. Meaning, if we jump on board with this and we don't receive any funds, we're not going to have to pay any funds.
Yeah, I think the idea is that it would be, certainly from our perspective, we want it to be a grant program, right? And basically reimbursing districts who have a demonstrated loss of revenue or a demonstrated, new expenses as a result of COVID, which is like, right, every district in California. We've got districts the cumulative loss is about $2 billion statewide to California special districts. So, but that being said, they would still have to demonstrate, what the actual numbers are to get a potential, like a reimbursement from the state. Does that help?
And it does. In your opinion, is there any downside for us doing this?
I don't believe so. Again, as I said, I recognize the fact that you guys are in a unique position in that, you have received some CARES Act funding last year, and there is some funding in the proposal right now. But, obviously you guys are a special district as well. You've been a longstanding member of CSDA, supported a lot of our efforts. And so it's kind of, trying to be part of the, part of the broader special district coalition, certainly statewide and national in this case, because we've got all kinds of districts across the country who are, obviously pushing for this. So.
Okay, thank you. That's it for me. Who's next?
Dean, I have just a question about the letter that we provide. Would we be able to make clear that we were lobbying on support of other special districts as opposed to asking for the money ourselves?
Absolutely, yeah. So I have a template, or we have a template letter that I can send to staff. And of course, yes, you can, modify that. It's just a template. You guys modify it how it works, how it's best for you guys to reflect your situation.
Got it. My concern was that if it appeared publicly as though we were trying to get these funds, it might not look good given that we don't really need the funds. So I could see us do it, like you mentioned, Rec and Park, those, in support of other districts. That seems like an idea, but it's as long as it's clear that we're not applying for these funds, because I think that's a different discussion.
Sure. As I said, for you guys, it's basically kind of being part of the special district group here. So
this is 5% of 100%, and the 100% would go towards cities and counties and state government. Where is that 5% being peeled from? Which other?
It'd be any money that goes to the state. So we didn't specifically want to take anything away from our partners in local government, cities and counties, right? Because again, you guys, right, we're a local government as well, and recognize the impacts that cities and counties have faced with COVID as well. So ours, essentially comes from the state share, and it's only that 5%. Which we've heard that the state could potentially be receiving, around $25 billion is some of the recent figures that we've heard. So, 5% of that seems reasonable, appropriate to, help some special districts out that have frankly been kind of left out of the game so far.
So it's still 1.25 billion.
Sure. I do public outreach. I don't do math.
So somehow that would be distributed to the 2,000 special districts.
Well, and that's to the chair's question, I believe earlier. Admittedly, that has not totally been determined how that would all happen. But again, at this point, trying to get the $1 billion basically outlined for special districts, and then admittedly, there's going to be a process and discussions that need to, that we would obviously help lead at the state level to determine how that actually gets distributed into who and, all those things.
Anything else, Mary?
No, it's just,
Okay, Kat or Rick?
I don't have anything.
I don't have any more questions. No, they've been answered. Thanks.
Teresa, just real quick, if I could just add the old CARES Act did, or the current CARES Act we're in did cover airports. There's quite a bit of funding that came through to us. We actually just got another $23,000 last week that is being sent to us for cleaning and building sanitation, things like that. And I was going to talk about that a little bit later. The bill they're proposing has $2 billion for airports and $45 million for general aviation airports nationwide. And so it's likely we will get an apportionment of that if Congress approves this new legislation. To kind of relate to what Mary and David were talking about, and Teresa, if we wanted to be supportive of other special districts, we could amend the letter basically saying that, this doesn't really, this funding isn't necessarily for our district, but we support, the other, like the rec district could desperately use the money. There's some that really need it. But you're right, we do not. I would even have a hard time making a case that we've been affected financially by COVID. I don't know where I would go.
Because we haven't.
Really well.
I'd like to make a motion that we send in a letter of support that's making clear that we don't want any of these monies, but we support other special districts.
do we want any sense of our local special districts, kind of, if we were to need it, or kind of putting our special districts up the food chain?
You mean calling that out in a letter? Like it would be our express desire that funding go to, within 100 miles of us, or I don't know what your thoughts are, but something like that?
Something like that.
Seems reasonable. We can send any letter we want and support, right?
This letter is going to go to our two senators and our congressmen, and we're just trying to get them to vote on these bills is the goal. But yeah, I could put whatever you want in there.
Sounds good to me. Go ahead, Brent. I know we haven't done public comment yet. I know, but
no, I know. I think the letter that's going to Congress is only supporting giving it to the state. Assuming it passes and goes to the state, I think that would be the time to indicate that the district doesn't need the money, but we need to keep it, in the area. But I don't think the people in Congress are going to be paying it. They're not getting that far down in the weeds as to, which special district in Nevada and Placer County gets the money. They're just going to decide whether they give it to the state or not.
And make sure special districts are mentioned in the legislation, which didn't happen last time. That's what it is.
okay. So we need a second. We need public comment, and then we need a vote. What order? David, second. Any public comment?
Don't have public comment.
Okay, you want to do a roll call?
Yeah, Vice President Diamond,
Yes.
Director Hetherington,
Yes.
President Odette,
Yes.
Director Rolfe,
Yes.
Director Stevens.
Yes.
Perfect. Does that wrap up our special meeting?
I think that wraps it up. Thanks, Dane, for coming.
Thank you, everyone. Appreciate it.
Do we need a
Appreciate it.
motion to end the meeting, or?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
I move that we end the meeting and return to our regular meeting.
Second.
Okay, Vice President Diamond,
Yes.
Director Hetherington,
Yes.
President Odette,
Yes.
Director Rolfe,
Yes.
Director Stevens.
Yes.
Hey, bye. We're still on the same Zoom meeting though, right?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so let's call that meeting to order. And do we have to do another roll call?
Yes.
Yes, it's a new meeting. All right, Vice President Diamond.
Yes, here.
Director Hetherington.
Here.
Yeah, it's here, I guess, but yes works too. President Odette.
Here.
Director Rolfe.
Here.
Director Stevens.
Here.
Okay, great. We have a quorum. Let's go to special orders of business. COVID-19 airport operations.
Cool. Just wanted to give a quick COVID update as we do each month. There's a lot of hopefulness that in the next 6 to 8 weeks, the county will be back in the orange, and hopefully soon after that, or the red and then orange, which the orange is when we hopefully can start bringing more employees back into the office, and we might be 6 to 8 weeks away from that is our hope. Operationally, we're fine. Revenue-wise, we're fine, as we just discussed. We're not seeing any dramatic increases or decreases in revenue or traffic, for that matter, with COVID. And I just did mention that this last week I received paperwork indicating that the FAA is going to send us $23,000 in additional COVID relief, and it's essentially for building sanitation. So some of you on the monthly service bills and fees, you'll see another cleaning vendor called Annie's Cleaning Service. That is our sanitation vendor that comes in every day, 7 days a week, and cleans. And what we might do is use that funding to do that twice a day instead of once a day, at least for the next few months, or 3 months or so. But that was, I just want to let you know that we did get some of that funding that has to be used for those kind of services under the CARES Act. So that's my brief update. I did want to just quickly give, if I could, just a couple of minutes, and I want him to take his airport employee hat off and put on his Nevada County supervisor hat on, and ask Hardy if he could just give a couple minutes update on what's happening at the Nevada County level with COVID. There's some interesting things that are happening, if the board is okay with that.
Yes, please.
Oh, hello, directors. So I just wanted to give you a brief update, or at least what I know. Kevin was accurate in his description, and basically from the county perspective right now, we struggled at first getting vaccines or shots in arms that everybody's heard about, but we're doing very well now. We're actually in the top 5 counties. Out of the 58 counties, we're in the top 5 for shots in arms, and Nevada County's given out about 20,000 doses, which is really impressive considering we have 100,000 total residents. There is some concern about getting to some of the Eastern County population, Latinx community, that may not be necessarily is integrated in the healthcare system, so we're watching that closely and working with the Tahoe Forest Hospital on that. As far as the tier structure goes, we are at about 11 cases per 100,000 right now, so we need to get down to 7 cases per 100,000 to move from the purple to the red, and then down near the 3 mark to get into the orange. But my discussion with our county health officer last night, basically the goal is really to get the county integrated into an open position by summer, and that means more of that red tier type of organization where restaurants can be at 50%. We could have potentially a county fair with proper mitigation. That may even include things like the air show with proper mitigation. So that's really hopeful. I think that everybody's hopeful in moving toward that direction. The tier-based vaccination structure, the tier 1A through B and C, is being dispensed with. So when we get through tier 1A, B, and C, we're going to go to strictly an age-based criteria. And that's actually going to be administrated by the third-party administrator, somebody like Blue Shield, who's going to come in. That does give us a little concern because we lose our local control. So right now, the county has, each county has some local control over receiving doses and then allocating that dosage out to different multi-county jurisdictions and hospitals. But so we're watching that closely and really trying to make sure that Eastern County and Tahoe Forest Hospital are prepared to work directly with the third-party provider that the state gives to us. So those are some of the concerns that are being discussed now, but in general, the program's moving forward pretty well. We're getting about 2,035 to 2,300 doses a week now, and that's supposed to double in the course of the next 30 to 60 days. And you'll hear that nationally, that all of these different dosage allocations are ramping up because production's ramping up. And then there's some new vaccines coming online as well. So it sounds like the concern that we had a month ago with vaccines is starting to wane because we're actually meeting some of the needs and getting it done. So, but there is concern about different at-risk populations that need to be served. So we're going to watch that. So that's what I have from the county perspective.
Hardy,
Oh, go ahead.
what do you hear about Placer?
I don't know a lot. I talked to Cindy a few days back, and we talked about many of the same issues. East County and West County, for Placer County and Nevada County, share a lot of the same logistical challenges. We put extreme energy into getting our teacher populace vaccinated, and that was kind of a genesis move to try and get parents and kids back into school and parents back into work. So we really focused on that, and Placer County has really struggled because they have so many teachers. They're bigger, obviously, but I think we face a lot of the same challenges in the East versus West and the logistics related to that. But I know that they weren't successful in getting their whole teacher populace vaccinated, which has been a real challenge.
But Hardy, the school district, it sounds like the school district, which is Placer, Nevada County, that the teachers got their second vaccine or are getting it here shortly, like days, is what I've heard from Carmen.
Yeah, TTUSD is actually a Placer County organization. Nevada County Health Department in Nevada County said these teachers primarily live in Nevada County, and we're going to allocate doses to every single teacher and support admin staff and bus driver in the TTUSD system, first and second dose.
So which vaccine are you distributing?
I think it's been a combination of the Moderna and the other, and basically we have kind of doses on hand, and then they have some buffer in an equation to use what goes into the arm and that needs to get set aside for second doses. There was a provision holding doses back, but that's stopped. And so basically when we have the doses, when Nevada County receives them, they go into the first dose allocation. And then we are promised essentially from the state the second dose. So there was some confusion on like how many people are just storing this on the shelf hoping to get the second dose administered. But as we know that there's more vaccines coming on the market all the time, but I don't actually know exactly where all those new vaccines are going to go or how we're going to get them.
Cool. Thanks for being our supervisor.
Thanks for letting me serve.
All right, so any public comment on that special order of business? Oh, go ahead, Mary.
Question for Kevin. So FAA just gave us the 23,000. How much did they give us in the first round?
154,000.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, any public comment on the COVID operations and business continuity update?
No public comment.
Okay, let's move on to the consent agenda. Anybody have anything they want to pull?
Did you want to do public comment on items not on the agenda?
Oh, sure. That sounds great. Thanks, Brent. Any public comment on items not on the agenda?
None thus far.
Okay. Then back to consent.
I want to
Anyone
pull
pull
the
anything?
minutes. I have one small comment.
Anyone else?
I want to talk about the monthly ops and comment report, but not on the other three.
Okay. Rick, you're up.
Okay, on the line 207, future agenda priorities and meeting management, where it talks about Director Diamond and Hetherington accessing support for multiple meetings in a month. And I expressed opposition to that idea and suggested that we need to run the meetings more efficiently and only do one meeting a month, primarily because of the enormous effort that the staff makes to put on a meeting. And so I don't want 2 meetings every month. I think it's too much. So I objected to that, and Lauren, you can shorten that too. I am not supportive of that. That's it. And with that, I'm okay to move to approve the minutes
As amended.
as amended.
Mhm.
Thank you.
And we are going to get to that, right? It's item 13, meeting management.
Yeah, we'll
We're
talk
going to
more
talk
about
about
that
it more
later.
comprehensively.
I'll second.
Could I make a comment about the minutes? I'd love to see my first name spelled correctly. There's
Great idea.
no E in Catherine.
We will fix
Just
that.
like the header. Yeah.
Right.
Okay, we have a first and a second. Roll call. Well, any public comment on the consent agenda?
So is the motion to approve the 3 consent action items?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. All right, roll call.
Well, I
Vice
asked for
President-
public comment,
Oh.
but yeah.
No public comment.
All right, Vice President Diamond,
Yes.
Director Hetherington,
Yes.
President Odette,
Yes.
Director Rolfe,
Yes.
and Director Stevens.
Yes.
Thank you, guys. Okay, Mary, let's talk about the monthly ops and comment report.
Yeah, do you want to pull it up there so we can all, anybody, look, I guess that's not that many. 497, January ops. I'm noticing of the top 5 commercial operators. Thank you, Kevin, David, Hardy, whoever put the numbers down so we can actually see the percentage of who's the top commercial operators and the number of operations they're doing and the top 5 airport origins. And I'd like to see that in every monthly because it gives us an idea of where we should be focusing. So I'm adding up the top 5 commercial operators, which is 497 operations. And how does that correlate to, well, almost 1,900? You know, if I subtract out helicopters, the total in January were 1,982 ops. So 500, so about 25% we're accounting for by these top 5 commercial operators. Is that correct?
Yeah,
Sounds
sounds
correct.
right.
We have to go back and look at the numbers there.
Okay. So that to me says that we're getting a lot of transient traffic, or when we're looking at the top commercial operators, you know, that was our first thought. And then, you know, it's iterative, you refine it. Do we have, not necessarily a commercial operator, but somebody who might be an individual who has a significant number of the operations? I mean, I know with the query, that whole thing that was developed by Vector, we probably can query. And that's my point, is trying to get who, you know, it may not be the commercial operator, it may be a single individual. I'm asking David, is that true or am I off base?
There's a few hangar tenants that I'll call them power users and fly quite regularly, making up a handful of operations in the year.
And we may have commuters, or we did have commuters to the Bay Area before COVID struck. And I guess, you know, I don't know. I guess I would like to see the top 5, you know, and historically we haven't wanted to identify individuals per se. We could do tail numbers, but I'd like to see those power users, the operations that they're creating as well.
Can I ask you, Mary, why? Like, is it just a curiosity thing, or is there value in that, and to what end?
There's value in that those are the people who have the largest footprint. And then it tells us where our focus should be in terms of outreach and talking to them about alternative approaches, alternative departures, all those kinds of things. It's
Fair enough.
So if I could add real quick, and Mark Covey and Hardy, and they could probably talk to that. We're pretty familiar with who all those people are. I don't know that we've got data that we can, we can go in and query all that and look at M numbers and create a table that has them in there. But the frequent travelers that are coming and going from this airport are very well known to staff, and we have constant outreach with them.
Well, and that's nice, but I'm responding to a constituency that I think this is public information, and I would like to see it in these ops and comments report. Am I the only one who thinks that's valuable?
I don't think we should call it individuals. That just doesn't feel right to me.
Okay.
To say, Sam Smith over here is flying, so he's the one making the noise over your neighborhood is the implication.
For what it's worth, when we have noise comments that we get back to the constituents about, we don't release tail numbers or who the owner of the aircraft is.
Correct. That was a long-term discussion back in 05, 06, 07, and there was legal justification in that, the argument being we wouldn't identify aircraft, and we also wouldn't identify publicly the commenters. But there are many airports that do identify tail numbers. And the flip side of that would be then we would have, for a fair playing field, you would identify commenters. And I'm just trying to put that out to the board for something to think about, because it's a point of information that people could use and consider valuable.
I have a question about that. If I rent an airplane from Sierra Aero 30 times in the month, I'm an individual flying 30 times a month, but then that would account against Sierra Aero's number, wouldn't it? Or would?
Yeah, I would assume so.
Because I wonder, like, with regard to the so-called frequent flyers, if they might be wrapped up in some of the commercial stuff. That's a possibility. And as a pilot and aircraft owner, I'm kind of hesitant to put information out that doesn't have a lot of context behind it, because I'm just afraid that if somebody takes it upon themselves to make decisions about that, we as aircraft owners, we already have too much of our personal information available on the internet, which is really scary. So if there's a way that I don't know if this is either legal or even possible, but would there be a way for us to cloak a tail number? Like if we were to give an artificial number to a given tail number that was only known to staff, so that we could track that this airplane is flying repeatedly, but that there's a layer of obscuration between that ownership of that aircraft and what's seen publicly. I don't know if that's legal, but
yeah, we do that. We do that quite frequently right now. So yeah, that's really simple.
Don't we track the people, the offenders, the ones who get noise complaints? So I'm not sure I'm understanding the point of tracking frequent flyers. I get frequent offenders, but people that are using the airport,
It's possible we could pull a list occasionally of all of the hangar tenant operations in a given period, if that's helpful.
Teresa, I'm also opposed to putting the name, rank, and serial number up on the website. So I would keep the policy of not disclosing names and tail numbers and names of commenters.
Bless you. Yeah, I think more privacy the better, as far as I'm concerned.
Because we have so little of it.
It's just that, because it is all information via FlightAware anyway. And FlightAware pull up any flight and find out who it's registered to.
I think for me, Mary, the difference there would be that it becomes FlightAware's responsibility that they've disclosed that information and not that we've disclosed it. That might be if the airport, if we distill that information and provide it in a report, and then a pilot's home is somehow vandalized because they're using the airport often. I'd rather them find out that they got that information from FlightAware rather than that it came from us. That's my concern about it.
Okay, well, I threw it out there. I would find it valuable, but the votes aren't there. Then the flip side is I'm looking at the January comments by type and seeing 300% increases on, year over year for jets, 367% increase on pistons, and 567% increase on turbos. Overall, a 333% increase on aircraft operations. I've been getting phone calls from various people, and it's MLK. What I tell them is, we all know MLK weekend, we all know President's weekend, but to me, this is an indicator for what we can expect this summer. And that's an unpleasant thing to think about, as we saw last month.
I appreciate that. That's something we thought about too as staff. I did want to point out that for whatever reason, January, and it may have been a lot of weather last January 2020, that we just didn't have as much in the way of comments, but it's the comments that we received in 2021 track similar to what we had in 2019. But for whatever reason, 2020 was a lower month, and then those percentages do look higher. But at the same time, I agree with what Mary's saying. We had a lot of comments, and we need to pay attention to that and be ready for what's for the summer.
Okay. Any public comment on the monthly operations and comment report?
No public comment.
Well, I move we approve it then.
And it's not a motion.
Just an information.
We're just moving on.
Never mind.
But thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, let's go
Thanks,
to
Rick.
Q4 annual safety and security report. Is that Stacy?
Casey,
It is. Good evening, y'all. Stacy Justin, Safety Security Manager. We had 17 total reports this last on the fourth quarter. Of interest was that we had an increased number of non-aeronautical people using the operational side of the airport as a recreational area. 5 events total that we did get a report on: 2 joggers, a hiker, a snowshoer, and some sledders. So we are in mitigation process, which includes placing more cement K-rail barricades with no trespassing signs surrounding the airport operational area. Any questions or comments?
Where are they coming in from?
Sledders.
Who's first?
Rick.
Where are they coming in from?
Some have, mostly it's on the west side. So they're coming in from Gate 1, which is down on Yorger Drive, just across from the bike area. They're also coming in from the warehouse. We also had one of the joggers actually came in from Gate 5, which is the south side of the East Hangars. And then she continued to jog up on the air side of the administration building. And we did get to stop her. She had earbuds in, so she couldn't hear us or the aircraft that she was running in front of. Yeah.
And are you all getting people coming in from the North 40?
So nobody's come in the fourth quarter from Martis Dam Road area. That is, but you guys will see that in the first quarter of 2021. So we did have joggers come in into the glider area, run down runway 20, took a left towards the east down runway 29. So.
Okay, any other questions for Stacy? Comments?
About the tenant moving the barricades and cones, that's pretty audacious. and, you know, you say an O&M supervisor had a big discussion with them. That makes me happy.
Yeah, she did. It was a good conversation, and the tenant did. You know, he did listen.
Okay. And in terms of the damaged hangar man door, is how they do it, and who pays for that damage?
It was actually during the RAM event. We actually had one of the renters actually took off the automatic spring that closes the man door. That had been removed so that when they went to push the button to have the bifold door go up, the man door opened and bent the steel frame.
The Jeep and Dodge are paying for that.
Oh, right.
Oh, was this one of the new hangars?
Yes, ma'am.
Ooh, bummer.
Well,
Yeah.
it'll look like brand new, and they're paying for it as part of their agreement.
And do we have a notation, like, don't remove things?
Yes. Added. I would like to point out we did have 3 incursions, and one of those incursions, actually both incursions, with the pilots. Even though the tower wasn't open, the tower controller did take initiative and found the pilot was on ground frequency. And he was able to advise them on the spot to use CTEF instead of ground. So I was impressed by our tower controllers for taking that initiative. Dave Hoffman, Director Hoffman, he's been reaching out to the hangar tenants for the momentary safety switches that were bypassed. There were 4 of them this last quarter. He's had really constructive conversations with the hangar tenants and makes them understand the structures and the systems of our hangars and why we need to push the button and hold it. Finally, we had each month we have our OSHA training, and then we also had a high number of airport specific trainings. And finally, we are always there enforcing safety compliance measures for our staff and our airport users in reference to our COVID-19 policy.
Great. And I'm glad to see, checking the cable mounts and the electrical outlets, because that's all about keeping it safe.
Sure, on the hangar side, you betcha. The cable mounts.
If you're trying too many amps, you can start a fire, and if the cable mounts bust, you can have a hanger come down on somebody.
Yeah, that was O&M staff Ryan Wyden. He found those lower cable mounts. He's certified welder, and when he took that off, he actually saw that the welds had been done over the paint, which you have to actually get metal to metal, so they didn't get a real good, weld in it. Okay. So that is being inspected for every hangar.
Good. Thank you.
If there's no more questions, I appreciate your guys' time. Thank you.
Thank you. Any public comment on Stacy's report?
No public comment.
Okay, thank you, Stacy.
Thank you, ma'am.
So now we have the financial report.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Awesome.
You weren't jogging on the ramp, were you, Kelly?
It was not me. I should start off by saying it was not me. And if I ever do run down here, I always ask Stacy first. That being said, quick update on our January revenues. All day we came within 128,000 of budget and just a little bit short of last January. The majority of that came from our jet fuel sales were slightly under budget, and tie downs, transient use fees, as Kevin mentioned earlier. We definitely didn't have as many operations this year. It felt like it, but I think we also had some snow days, so kind of evened out there. I just tried to pick out something that we chat about now and again. And I looked a little bit more in depth at the hangar rental revenue, and just wanted to kind of explain how come we are sometimes off, and it doesn't track exactly to what we budget. So for example, and this is all with the help of Jill and Sean feeding me all the good information. But for example, we have 8 hangars in transition this month. So that's reflecting about $6,000 worth of rental revenue. However, we were able to rent those out on a nightly basis and make up that $6,000. So even though some of it is showing short, we are making up for it wherever we can, which is great. We still have 86 people on the T hangar wait list, 21 for the next size big doors, and 56 for regular, and then 3 for end caps. But we're certainly
that's like 165 people on the waiting list.
Oh wait, sorry.
Roughly
86.
Yeah, with the total.
Did I read it wrong? Oh, 9. Sorry, 9 plus 21 plus 56. Yeah, not that many. But then we also are getting our certificate of occupancy on the storage containers for the nonprofits too. So once we get those guys moved out, we'll be able to put more people in there too. So just some fun facts about hangar revenue. All day long net income is a loss of 85,000, but a budget to lose 150. So we're almost 65,000 ahead of budget. So we're doing pretty good so far for 1 month worth of January, and moving into March in the next, the second week of March, we'll be working through our field audit, I guess you could call it, but it's still going to be remote with our auditors and getting 2020 wrapped up. Does anybody have any questions?
This is more for Kevin, I guess, in that, you said we had less operations this year in January versus last year, but it's really only 38 less, which is, 2% less. But to have that much drop in transient use fees and tie downs, what's your thought on that?
Well, it's 1 month, and so a lot of times we have to track that along. I know what you're saying. Also, there's weather issues that we have to look at. I think we had 6 or 7 days where we had weather where we didn't have any. How many days did we not have jet fuel sales?
I think it was like 6 or 8.
Yeah, January, February are always kind of funny for us because we'll have a month in January where it's sunny all month, and then you have another one where there's multiple days with weather, and so it could be a combination of factors. I mean, we sold more fuel was another thing that we looked at. And David and I were talking about that, David Diamond, but we also in our fee schedule, we increased the amount of fuel you need to buy to waive the TU fee. And so we think we had more into wing per aircraft. But yeah, we watch those trends and kind of check them out. But sometimes it's hard to pinpoint why 1 month can be so different than another.
So it's possibly because we sold more fuel, and therefore we waive the transient use fee tie down.
One option.
Okay.
We still were short 20,000 in jet fuel sales though to budget.
Kelly, the financials are mainly income. You didn't attach a balance sheet.
Yes, I need to roll my balances once the audit's finished, so we'll have one of those for you next time.
Well, I'm always curious at what the loan balance is on the executive hangars.
It doesn't change until next August.
When you make a once-a-year payment.
Yep.
Thank you.
I can get it for you, though.
That's all right. I've asked my question.
Okay.
I know I should know the answer to this. Oh, go ahead, David.
Oh, I was just going to say, with regard to the, and thank you in advance, because you and Stacy and David through Kevin had answered a lot of my questions offline, so appreciate that. But then I had another thought about this. Do we have any plans for the hangars that the airport is using for the storage of equipment? Do we have any options or plans to move that equipment someplace else so that we can use those hangars for aircraft?
Yeah, we do. There's really 3 hangars that are in that boat. One of those hangars has some challenges with water and ice that we've got to fix. That can be a hazard to a tenant, where water flows underneath the door and freezes. It also, when they open the door, it holds the door down. We're trying to figure that out. So we've got stuff in that hangar. Dave Hoffman and I have talked a lot about Alpha 9 and how to get GSE, which is ground surface equipment storage. We need something in the front of the house where all that equipment is stored, and we've used Alpha 9 for about 3 years to use that. We also have a wood shop that's in one of the hangars, and we're looking for a place to move that potentially into an end pocket.
That's the leaky one.
That's the leaky one, yeah. And so, yes, our goal is to try and get as many of those hangars into revenue producing and into, for tenants as possible. We're getting closer. Just a, small handful of them left, but we intend to get airplanes in those as soon as possible.
That it, David?
And the hangar cost for for our aircraft that's in B3, is that part of the cost allocation for that aircraft when it's rented out?
We did. So the pro forma that we did on that when we bought the plane included recovery of that rent. We are in the process of doing a report that we will get you to the board this spring about how's that program doing, how's the JTA, earning, and revenue and cost and things like that. It's funny because that plane had to be parked quite a bit due to COVID. It didn't fly for a few months earlier this year. We actually had to park it for about 3 weeks earlier in January. So there's some things like that we'll look at also. And then maintenance on that airplane ebbs and flows. Sometimes there's nothing. Other times there's $6,000. So we're going to show you all that and kind of show you the noise comments with the JTA versus the other aircraft, and then kind of give you an idea of performance, and then also our maintenance expectation going out a few years. And we just did raise the rate on that plane another to 170 an hour from 150 to try and beef up the reserve to handle some of these future costs.
Thank you.
So I had a quick question. I know I should know the answer to this, but Kevin, Kelly, we budget annually. Do you break it down monthly? Meaning, is it just divided by 12, or are you specific?
No, like all the revenues, anything that I can do a look back historical, I do a calculation of the percentage of how much it was historically. So revenues, for example, are broken down each month based on kind of how did we do overall last year by month.
So
things that make sense, like phone bills are 12.
Is it 1/12 on all categories, or you're saying revenue is not? No. Revenue is like, okay, in January we did this percentage of the whole. Okay.
You got it. Yep.
Great. Thank you.
And also for like wonky things like the election expense, we know happens every December or whatever, that goes in December.
Perfect. Thank you.
Sure.
And any other board member comments or questions?
David, thank you for clearing up questions offline.
Yes, thank you.
Pleasure.
Okay, if we don't have any other board member comments, do we have any public comment?
No public comment.
Okay, thank you, Kelly. Excellent.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to number 7, consideration of adoption of policy instruction 208.1, board meeting minutes.
Okay, so staff is bringing this potential policy for you guys to consider setting a minutes style. We reviewed the best practices that were presented by the City Clerks Association of California. They gave pretty good guidance as far as best practice of minute drafting, and Kevin and I came to a really easy decision that the brief summary style of minutes is the more appropriate one that fits our district. And is not too terribly far off of what we do right now. The action only is a really kind of extreme version. It just wouldn't fit for us. Mostly brief summary minutes are just drafting direction, like a brief overview of what's being presented, and then to collect the collective body's direction given to staff, as well as the collective body's consensus, and then what led to an action item, instead of focusing on board member statements and rationale of why they voted a certain way. We think it's appropriate if board members really want to have that included, have their statement documented for the record, to have that somehow included into the motion if they're able to do it at that time, or submit a board of directors like summary as an addendum to the minutes if they feel like they need to explain further. But that is taking that liability off of staff and putting it onto the director, and they would be able to submit that as well. This is honestly just a housekeeping item. We should have this policy. We've never had a board minutes policy, and it's really something that I think would help staff when it comes to the amount of time that we spend drafting minutes, making it more efficient if we're narrowing down what we're actually capturing in the minutes. We do post archived videos of each board meeting on our website. So if the general public would like to watch the board meeting in its entirety and want a word for word, recount, they have that option to watch the meetings in full length. I do add that to my minutes anyways and provide a direct link for each month's meeting. So it's not like they're having to dig around through the website trying to find that meetings recording. That would still be listed in the minutes at the very end. I provided the clerk's guidelines as well, and you'll be able to see that it's pretty much our policy is pretty much verbatim to those guidelines when it comes to the brief summary minutes, and those have been attached. So if you guys have reviewed that and you have any questions for us, we'd be happy to answer them. And Kevin as well, he's worked with me through this for the past several months, actually.
Thank you. Who wants to go first?
I agree with Lauren.
Mary?
I went and checked what Tahoe City PUD, what they do, what the Placer County does. Those two were very impressive, well-documented minutes. Nevada County, TDPUD, TDRPD, TSD, TT. I checked what other people are doing in minutes.
Yeah.
Just to get a sense. And, I'm okay with this. It is critical that we get Rory and the television folks that they, right away, that we can have those video clips signed up. In looking at this, though, I did pull up policy instruction 208, which is all about recording, retention, and dissemination of audio and video meeting recordings. And this dates back to 94, updated up through 11, and it is kind of not even really necessary anymore, to the extent of everything's recorded in the net,
Yeah,
So,
it's an archive. It's an older policy for sure.
yeah, but it's still there. And about getting rid of stuff after 365 days. So I don't know, in the sense of maybe looking at, we're going to adopt this as 208.1, but I'm asking Kevin to look at 208 with you and say, do we even need, and or, we're going to adopt it as 208.1, but should it really be 208 in future?
We still have to maintain audio recordings per, the Brown Act. So I keep audio recordings for a year and then, delete them as that month rolls along. But our video archiving is kept up with no end date. So it's kind of, I still have to keep the audio recordings. So I'd like to maintain that part of the policy.
And that is after 365 days.
Mm-hmm.
I get
We
that.
definitely can look at 208 and see if it needs some updating.
For sure.
Gordon and I can do that. And then, if we need to renumber, we might bring something back to renumber a few policies, but we can definitely do that.
David? Kat?
I think the brief summary style, I think, is great. I would support that. I would love it a lot more if I felt like our video recordings were indexed and that by the meetings there could be a link to a specific part of the video. Because when you've got a 4 to 5 hour video and you're asking the public to scan through it for a specific area, it's kind of tough to do that. But like I said, I would still support this without that. But if we could, if that was an option for us, I think that would make a big difference as far as the usability of these archives for people.
Yes, I think we could talk to TTCTV and see what we have in our agreement with them regarding the turnaround and the tabbing through the agenda on the right hand of the screen with their new website that they have. I do, which I've done, I've made a practice of when we've had really lengthy conversations and I've had to shorten it, obviously, in the minutes. I have provided at least an hour and minute mark for the public to kind of scroll to if they wanted to listen to that particular conversation on my own. But we can discuss with TTUSD about trying to get those tabbed agenda faster. They have been quite quick when it comes to posting the video itself, but the tab items, we can talk about that with him.
Thank you.
Kat?
That was my question too, so that's been answered. I think that would be really useful to have the tabs.
I have a couple of quick clarifying. Is the video kept in perpetuity?
We have, so I believe I'd have to check how far the videos go on the website. They go several years back, way before my tenure. I want to say 2013. We started. What was it? I think it was around 2013. We started archiving the videos online, and one of during my low times of working from here at home, I was able to link all of those video links on the website where you would find the agenda items and the approved meeting minutes. There's now a blue tab that says watch video. And so there's a direct link to those videos that weren't there before.
Goes back to 2012.
Oh, too long. Okay. Yeah.
So the answer is yes. We keep them indefinitely.
Yeah, we don't delete them.
Who hosts those?
As far as
whose server has these videos? Is it ours or is it?
Yeah, we have a DVR. We have a DVR, but they also originally were hosted externally on the
TTCTV.
Yeah, so there's kind of a combination right now.
Works for me. That was all I had.
I believe they're also available directly on YouTube.
I think the recent ones are. Through TTCTV, but I'm unsure you could find like a 2012 video on YouTube.
Oh, okay.
Okay, any other board member comments or questions? You can nod.
No.
Any public comment?
I have no public comments.
Who wants to make a motion?
I will move that we accept the brief summary style of board minutes as recommended by staff. Does that work?
Second.
Maybe adopt or recommend adoption of PI 208.1 in addition. Can you put that in your motion too? Is that all right?
Yes.
I'll second that too.
Hey, roll call.
All right. Vice President Diamond,
Yes.
Director Hetherington,
Yes.
President Odette,
Yes.
Director Rolfe,
Yes.
and Director Stevens.
Yes.
Perfect. Thanks, you guys. Thanks, Lauren. Where are we? We're number 8, review and approval of 2021 district goals.
Yeah, thank you. So at our workshop on the 11th, we spent some time talking about these goals, and I had quite a bit of notes from different board members. And as I tried to assemble that, I ran into a few challenges trying to figure out how to kind of make this all fit together. I looked at the categories of these 3 items in red, and then moving goals underneath those, but then they kind of crossed over different areas of that, and I wasn't sure which one to put it in. So I kind of settled on what's in the board packet of these focus areas of low impact, high quality aviation services and benefit to the community at large as focus areas, and then having those specific goals that we reworded based on some of the input that the board had received. There's also a follow-up I think that I might want to do if the board is inclined to go forward with something like this or something similar. I'm hoping I can do this by April. I have my next quarterly GM performance evaluation is in April, and we could take this into kind of a work plan with objectives and there's tasks that go along with the objectives, and maybe even moving some of the things that are in the budget, the things that we're already doing, into these 3 categories in red, and might be easier for us to track. So I'm kind of starting to play around with how I might put that together, but that's what I would throw out there for now. Interested in any board input and thoughts that you might have. Last thing, sorry, is I do think that we'll do our budget process a little different. I'm going to suggest in 2022, where we start this exercise like in June with the workshop, and then use this through the budget process. So when you adopt the budget in December, this is done. This is all part of that. And I've got some ideas on, and I know, David, if you may have ideas on that too. So with that, I'll be quiet.
Who wants to go first? We could just go alphabetically. David, you're first.
Okay. I have no problem with any of the goals that are there. When I did kind of my own little exercise, I'm looking at my notes here of the taking up the low impact on neighbors from our mission statement, the benefits to the community, and the high quality aviation services, and just kind of put the proposed goals where I thought they felt or they fit. And I love the fact that we were super, super heavy on benefits to the community. And I know that there's some disagreement on this, but to me, the advanced flight procedure work is a high quality aviation services. It's arguably also low impact on neighbors. But in fact, if that was not low impact on neighbors, I don't think we have even one goal that is there. So that Kevin and I talked about that, getting into maybe we need to define what low impact on neighbors actually is for different people. But I do love, in fact, going back to what Kevin had just said there, I love that idea. Like if we've got a mission statement, that we use it as a guiding principle with regard to our goals, also with regard to our future budgeting and all that, just to kind of know that we are balanced in our approach here. Like I said, I love the fact that we're very, very heavy on benefits to the community, the greenhouse gas reduction, the agency partnerships, the community engagement, the workforce housing. But then again, that last one, the flight procedures, it goes one place or another place, but it does kind of leave us, if we put it on low impact on neighbors, we've got nothing on advanced aviation services or high quality aviation services, excuse me. And if we put it in high quality aviation services, we've got nothing on low impact on neighbors. That was just my thought on them.
I think that's reasonable. Mary, you're next alphabetically.
Okay. I appreciated this. I mean, I like, focus areas. I thought, that really steps it up, and not in order of priority. I think specific 2021 goals, there should be also not in order of priority underneath that. I did, Kevin and I had talked about this, and this idea of populating these tasks and work plans, going back to that CSDA article, we have specific tasks, so that at the end of the year we kind of know, well, you meet this, you didn't meet that, we for ourselves. And I think his point about, we can use that as a planning tool for 2022, but I think, in my mind, having a special meeting where we talk about trying to figure out what these tasks are and do it on 2021 goals, so that it's kind of a test case proving, so that when we are then doing it for 2022 in June, we've already kind of built the framework, the infrastructure for it. So I would propose having something like that, so we can say, okay, what's a specific goal? What is a specific task for this? I did also notice that one of the things I brought up last month, and maybe it was just me who talked about, but in terms of the outreach to corporate and private, and I mean, we're doing that anyway, but somehow getting that as a goal, and I guess that could fall under, it doesn't really fall easily under any of these. So that's
the second bullet just has, well,
oh, there, my bad.
It's talking about greenhouse gas. I guess I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
So it's kind of maybe a period, 2 sentences. Yeah, I see your point. But yeah, you see it, and that's where I say breaking out that matrix of here's a goal, here's a work plan, here's the tasks, that we actually develop that specificity. The other one, that the master plan, I guess we hadn't really decided, are we doing it or not?
But it asked me to come back with an RFP.
Oh, okay.
So that's kind of the dilemma of there's a lot of stuff in the budget that we're going to do, and to try and keep it brief and succinct, where you got 4 or 5 or 6 goals.
Yeah.
What do you put in there and what do you not put in there? But with the budget that was approved, there's a lot of things we're going to be forwarded, and that's what I can load into the objectives under some of these categories. Some of those things that are already in the budget that we're moving forward on.
Okay. So that second bullet would probably end at, and projects. Okay. I guess it's captured there. And I guess that, that was it. Thank you.
Thank you. Since we're on a roll with alphabetical, how about you, Kat?
Well, I agree with Mary. I like this, the idea of having specificity and being able to check things off. I was telling her earlier today that it was uncomfortable for me doing Kevin's performance evaluation, because I came late in the year to the board, and I think it'd be really nice to sort of see progress throughout the year, and make that particular job easier at the end of the year. And I just have a little bit of a problem with the very first line, the low impact on our neighbors, because we don't have low impact on many of the neighbors. And so do we want to say we're striving for lower impact on our neighbors? It says it's such a blanket statement, and people who live in Olympic Heights would never, I think, never say that was the case. So I don't know what that's trying to impart. Low impact on our neighbor, maybe lowering the impact on our neighbors. I don't know. It's just thing.
I get that it's blanket, but we do strive for that. Just because they wouldn't say we're successful in it doesn't mean we're not working on it and open to any ideas they bring to us.
Yeah, because we took that out of the mission statement. It does say strive for low impact, and maybe we need something like that, or if strive is the right word. But you're right. If it's a focus area for low impact, well, maybe striving or working hard to, or something like that, a qualifier.
I kind of like lowering the impact. I mean, it bumps it up that it's really important to us.
And that we.
About reducing impact.
Pardon?
Reducing impact.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that.
But that's a goal. It's
a focus area.
Right.
We'll have multiple objectives and goals underneath that we can try.
Anything else, Kat?
No, that's it.
Okay, Rick, you're up.
I like the fact we've gone from 10 to 5, and I like the idea of reducing impact. That's it.
Agreed. David, to your point, isn't the ACAT piece, isn't that, I mean, I know it initially started as working on reducing the impact on neighbors, right? Wasn't that the initial mission?
You're talking about of old ACAT?
Old ACAT, yeah, if you want to call it that.
No, I
ACAT as I know it.
Of when it was first originally created, as opposed to what it had evolved into over the years. Because it evolved over the years. ACAT, I mean, Cat
Sure.
can talk about this. It evolved. It started doing a lot of other things other than that original charge. Because as we've heard people like say, the low hanging fruit on reducing noise had been picked, and so ACAT didn't know what else to do, so it started doing other things. But I think in this case, I agree where the ACAT thing is in that enhancing the community engagement, increasing the community engagement. He's got it listed in there, and I think it makes sense there.
I mean, I feel like it's a priority for us and for them, and always 24/7 what we're all thinking about. So I don't know how to capture that, but it is an ongoing specific goal.
Yeah. We're going to have more discussion on ACAT next month. Yeah, we got there in the 4th bullet.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so what do you need from us?
Just, Mary has a comment. It's like,
do we see benefit of structuring some time to populate a matrix with the specificity? Within a board meeting would be nice, but this could be 2 hours, 3 hours by itself. And doing the framework in March or April sets it up so that in June for 2022, it's already been developed.
I think that's totally valuable, but I don't know that I think it's in addition to what we're doing here tonight. It doesn't need to be attached to it. Yeah.
I'm just saying, do we want Kevin to send out a doodle and trying to find an alternate, a time when we can do a workshop based on this to expand what the goals, instead of the goals, it becomes goal 1, task 1, 2, 3, 4, and we flesh that out so he has specific, and he can take the first shot at it.
That was my suggestion. I was going to say, how about Kevin gives us a matrix that says this is what I'm going to do with the staff to achieve these things.
Yeah, and that's what I want to present to you in April. I probably have it done by March, but I have a quarterly evaluation in April, and it's very pertinent to that same conversation. I know I can have it by then, but I'll probably have something sooner I can send out.
Did you catch that, Kat? He does quarterly evaluation, so we do have an opportunity to talk to Kevin about how he's doing on the regular
basis. Closed session item, we get together and talk about goals and how we're doing.
Perfect. Okay.
Jason, do you have what you need?
Okay.
Yeah, so this is an action item for the board to, and you can call it, you can approve the goals, you can accept the goals, you can amend them anytime. Any board meeting we can amend these, but a motion to accept them or approve them would be what we're looking for. I think I have a sample motion for you in the staff report.
Yeah, I move to approve the airport 2021 goals as discussed, attached with the following modifications. So it'll be reducing the impact on our neighbors under specific 2021 goals, not in order of priority. And I think that was it.
Why don't you, Mary, you want to add in the staff or the general manager will bring back an objective matrix, and then the board can discuss a possible work session after you look at that?
I like that. Add that to the motion.
Who wants to second?
I'll second.
Okay, before we vote, we need public comment. Lauren?
No
Public comment? Okay, great. Roll call.
Okay, Vice President Diamond?
Yes.
Director Hetherington?
Yes.
No,
President Odette?
no public
Right.
comment.
Oh, wait. Go ahead. Lauren?
I have no public comment.
Oh, sorry. I thought you said something else. Okay, I say yes.
Okay, Director Rolfe
Yes.
and Director Stevens.
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you. Let's move on to number 9, revenue and cost allocation analysis and FBO fee study.
Let me quickly check, is Jeff Coleman on the call?
I don't see him.
I don't either. Yeah.
Let me, I wonder if he's having trouble getting on. Why don't we go to, if it's okay, can we skip ahead to the cost and allocation study? I'd like Jeff to get on the call. I'm going to email him or text him real quick. Is that all right?
What do you mean we are on cost and allocation? You want to skip over it?
Sorry, the classification and compensation study.
Okay, let's go to number 10.
Maybe I'll give that
Really
to
buzz,
Lauren
Jeff.
real quick to kind of,
You want me to buzz Jeff?
yeah, do you want to buzz Jeff? If you could do that, that'd be great.
Yeah.
I know he
But in the meantime, we're going to number 10.
All right, item 10. What we're proposing to the board today is to allow staff to go and prepare an RFP to issue to create another cost and allocate, or classification and compensation study. So every 5 years since 2010, this will be the third one. The district has engaged a consultant. The first one was a company called Archer. The second one was Rice Consulting to do classification and comp studies. And there's really two parts of these that are important. The first one is they go through and audit our job descriptions, and they actually physically go through and audit what the employees are doing on a daily basis. They have surveys that they send out, and what they're doing is they're checking to make sure that we have our employee group classified correctly for FLSA, meaning is someone exempt that shouldn't be exempt, or non-exempt and should be exempt, things like that. And that could be a real issue. We've had experience with that in the past, where getting an expert on that to analyze that, a third party to come in, is super helpful. That's the first part. The second part they do is they analyze your compensation. They look at primarily lots of other special districts and local government agencies. They'll look at the town of Truckee. They'll look at Placer County. They'll look at special districts, and then give you a report on how the employees with the district fit in with the region. At times we have tried to do the private sector. It's incredibly difficult. That's proprietary. Most of them won't give us data. We did try that in 2016 with a little bit of success, but didn't really get what we wanted. And so this is on our certificate of transparency, excellence and transparency with CSDA. I will say it is not required for that certificate of transparency, and I put that in the staff report, but it's one of about 6 things they strongly recommend that you do. And they do say it's a best practice, and they encourage all the districts to do it. We commonly get a couple of those requests a year where other districts up here locally or the region are asking for our data while they're doing theirs. So it's in the budget. It's a flagged item that the board asked us to bring back. Our next step, if the board does want us to pursue this, is we would go and get a RFP together and come back, have the board approve the RFP and scope, and then we would put it out to the consultant community to give us a proposal. Lauren, did I miss anything?
No, you got it all.
I wanted to, well, I guess you guys can go first. I'll go last. David, do you have any comments?
Yeah, I just typically I'm not a fan of engaging in reports and stuff unless we have a clear, actionable outcome or plan for what the results of the report would be. I did talk to Kevin about this. I had hesitations about a generic study as it applies to our incredibly unique environment with regard to, you know, our town and employment prospects here, and you know, all the other stuff that that we're all aware of here that makes us different than, for example, San Jose or Sacramento or something like that. But having spoken with Kevin, he did bring up a few tangible examples of where such a study would have been valuable for us and would have saved us some money in litigation. Because of that, I would be in favor of doing this.
Thank you. Mary?
I'm just looking at the Bryce. There was outreach to Squaw, Tahoe, Donner, North Star, the hospital. Those are thinking about the big private employers, trying to get some of that data, whatever we can get. I think, I would like to include that. Let's see, and I'm trying to think who else is the big employers, and that might be it, is the big ski areas. Trying to get some of that data just as a comparative purpose.
Kat, you're up next.
I wonder if David could clarify the examples that Kevin gave you.
It was actually one example, and I'll let Kevin talk about it. It was about a alleged misclassification of a former employee, and the former employee doing to recover some costs. Kevin?
Yeah. And that's pretty much what I was that was it, really. There was some closed session items with that, so I don't know how much I could talk about now. And it was one of those things where the district didn't necessarily do anything wrong. We could have been just fine, but in the 2016 classification and comp study, it did raise the issue of, hey, you want to look at these things, and that type of information can be really valuable. And it's really good every 5 years, even if we only did the first part of it. I think both parts are important, but even if you did that first, the classification is really the part that is where the most liability is for the district, making sure our employees are classified correctly. And we have had situations where you have employees right on the edge, and the consultant usually helps us wade through that, and we've had that situation before. I don't know if that helped.
Can we, to make that a little bit more clear, I think, Kat, it was a exempt versus non-exempt situation. Well, so that was the classification that was challenged.
Okay, so I guess this sounds like a stupid question, I guess, but if we're paying somebody to do this study, and all of the other special districts up here are paying somebody to do this study, it just seems like there's a lot of money going into doing all the same thing. You see what I'm saying?
I do see what you're saying. Yeah.
I mean, it just seems like it should be sort of maybe there should be a central entity that collects all that data, and for a fee a smaller fee. You know what I'm saying? Like, should they just be working for us, or should they be working for everybody who wants to join in?
For the second part of the study, that really would be accurate, the compensation side. And I think that depending on who you pick, a lot of times you're actually getting some of that. Like Bryce Consulting has done many of those studies up here and have that data, but it has to be updated every year. The classification side is unique to every entity, because they look at every single job description, and then they survey the employee, and then they interview the employee to assure that that we've got them classified correctly.
Okay. All right, thanks.
Thank you.
But that's an interesting idea. Has there ever been talk amongst all the general managers when you get together, instead of, we'll do it in 21, somebody will do it in 22, somebody will do it in 23.
Yeah.
Just to do it once.
I can bring it up at a general managers meeting. I know the schedule is probably the biggest thing for, where individual agencies are, and some of the agencies just want to do their own, doesn't matter what we all are doing. On the compensation side is where that would be handy. I don't see any way that it would, they're all going to do their own when it comes to how their employees' job descriptions are written and classified. But I can ask particularly on the compensation side.
Yeah, because how much money do we have allocated for this?
I want to say 15. Excuse me. Let me grab this.
Yep.
There's 40,000.
40,000, and so it's 20 and 20, kind of.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, that's just when we bid it, we'll find out what it costs. I think it was around 30 last time we did it.
Yeah, I mean, I agree that doing the classification makes a lot of sense, but I'm kind of, I never thought about how Kat brought that up in terms of the compensation kind of across the board. Kind of maybe bid this as a Part A, Part B component. It's an interesting idea because, sometimes I feel like they all look,
Yeah.
Could you come back and tell us more about that and maybe bid this as a Part A, Part B?
We could definitely bid it as Part A and Part B. We can put on there the classification, and then we also want the comp. We could definitely do that. I have an area managers meeting next month. I can bring it up there as to not all of them do this. I would say most do, but not everybody does these. Every 5 years, CSTA strongly encourages us to do it. But I can ask with other agencies if anyone else is in the process of doing it.
Most utility districts do it. It usually runs in line with their union contract negotiations and making sure salaries are competitive, and if their employees are being paid appropriately compared to like cost of living up here. And
Thanks for that, Lauren. Rick, do you have any questions or comments?
I'm in favor. And I like the idea of working with other districts to split the cost on this.
Yeah, and I'll find out if anyone else is in the process of doing this.
I want to add editorially that in my years on the board at the fire districts in Tahoe City, we had to do it because of union negotiations. We had to do it every 2 years when we went through that contract negotiation. It was very specific to the fire district and anyone who was in PERS, which wasn't everyone, but the vast majority were in PERS. So the administrative staff, et cetera, was covered in it. And it was an invaluable tool in those negotiations. I know we're not negotiating with a unit, a body like that, but I do think it would be valuable to do. So I am also in favor.
Well, so maybe then what I'm hearing is, did everyone talk?
Mm-hmm.
Is to bring back an RFP with the Part A, Part B, and also talk with, and I'll include in there that we should ask them to see if they can contact local private employers to get data from them. I can put that in the RFP, and then also check with the other districts on at least the compensation part if anyone else is doing it, and if we can partner with anyone else that's in process.
Great.
Oh, good.
Thank you. Any public comment?
no public comment.
Okay. I will entertain a motion. Anyone?
Are we, just for clarification, we're motioning to continue this until Kevin gets back to us?
So I can restate it if you want. The motion is for staff to prepare an RFP. Oh, I'm not making a motion. A sample motion would be prepare an RFP with a Part A and Part B comp study allocation, check with other local districts that are doing compensation, try and partner, and also add local local private employers, make sure that's included in the RFP to see if they can get that data.
I make that motion.
I second that motion.
All right, and then we already did public comment. Vice President Diamond,
Yes.
Director Hetherington,
Yes.
President Odette,
Yes.
Director Rolfe,
Yes.
Director Stevens.
Yes.
Perfect, thank you. We'll be back with that one.
Okay, you want to go back to number 9? Is there the person you're waiting for on the line?
I see Jeff here. So number 9 is, agenda item 9 is this is an item that's included in our 2020 budget, or 2021 budget, to do a cost of revenue allocation analysis, similar to the one that was done in 2010. So I just wanted to say, this is primarily a financial exercise, and we sent out, I think Mary is the only one fortunate enough to been around in 2006 and 2010 when we did the last two of these things. And Jeff was around to be able to work with Mary and the rest of the board on those. They are, it's a financial exercise. It's not really a broader policy vetting tool. It's hard to, you can use it to help set policy, but it's not really going to create policy. It's more of checking our finances and expenditures and revenue, and seeing if certain business lines at the airport are making money. What they do is they help us with cost recovery, profit margins, understanding how our products and services are recapturing or covering our expenses. And so it's very handy in that, but it can inform policy. We can basically build policy off of that. I also included in the board packet, I did put our current rates and charges schedule. That was updated most recently in January, where it was more of a comprehensive update. And I just put that out there because I think as part of the budget process, or not, I think we do need to do this as part of the budget process, to have the board approve that with the budget every year. Our new primary management compliance documents require that, or sets that out, that the board would do that. This tool can help you understand if that rates and fees schedule is recovery costs. And it really is another way, and Jeff can correct me if I'm wrong, but it is another way you can understand if property tax is subsidizing certain operations at the airport. I don't know that the allocation will specifically break out property tax, but when you see if certain business lines aren't generating a profit, that money's got to come from somewhere, and it's generally coming from property tax. So it can answer some of those questions. So with that, I'll turn it over to Jeff to mention anything I missed out, and then back to Teresa, if that's okay.
Sure. Thank you, Kevin. Thank you for the opportunity. Director Hetherington, good to see you again. It's been a while. We've, as Kevin said, have done this twice, 2006, 2010. 2006, you had an amazing accounting manager, Jane Dykstra, on staff that really helped form what this was when we did it. Mary has been instrumental in forming it as well with her input and questions throughout. And I would say that, before we just launch and do what we did in 2006 and 2010, that we really want to scope this to make sure that we do answer the questions that both the board as well as management want to get answered. I imagine that there'll be a lot of similarities to what was done in 2006 and 2010, but we want to make sure questions are answered, not that we're bringing answers to questions that don't exist. And as Kevin mentioned, we're analyzing both the revenue streams, the operating and capital cost streams to identify true costs and profits or margins associated with different revenue centers and cost centers. So, if you divide, we sort of do these in silos. Your first big two silos is the airport and the FBO. Within the airport, you have a lot of different secondary silos. You've got the airfield, you've got the ramp areas, you got the hangars, you have these other projects that the district takes on utilizing your tax revenues. And so as Kevin mentioned, we typically will apply revenue streams to how they are being utilized. So obviously, jet fuel sale revenues, avgas sale revenues, ramp handling type fee revenues, those are all going to go into the FBO and allocated by the different product lines. Hangar revenues are obviously going to get applied to hangar capital costs and operating costs. Tax revenues should be applied to those special projects, like when the golf course was acquired, the large plot of land that had a lot of lumber on it. So, we want to work very carefully to make sure that we put both the revenues, the capital costs, and the operating costs into the correct silos, so we result in a proper allocation. And then make sure that we calculate what, again, back to, you'll be asked several questions at the front end of this project, making sure we answer your questions. Just as an example of some of them, hangars, we figure out capital and operating costs and revenues on a cost per square foot basis, and usually by the different types of hangars. On the FBO side, for fuel sales, we're figuring out revenues and operating costs on a per gallon basis. On the airfield side, we're figuring out costs on a per operation basis. So those are the type of examples that we come up with. There are a lot of things, I think, as Kevin mentioned, how do you use this information? There are certain things that you set rates for in your rates and charges schedule. Some of those rates are market-based. Commonly in airport and the FBO industry, your fuel sales has an element of market-based, your hangar charges has an element of market-based. On the fee side, typically that's more cost-based. So when you're charging for use of your airport, the runways, the apron parking, those are typically more a cost-based approach, where this kind of study will come into benefit. Mary will like to hear this one part about this project is that we recently hired a new team member that's going to be part of this project. He is a CPA and a former CFO for an airport. So someone that has really good tangible experience in these areas, and he'll be assisting me on this project. Happy to answer any questions.
David, alphabetically, you're first.
David always gets to go first now. I have high hopes for something like this, and I have serious reservations about the usefulness of it. The idea of knowing this stuff, to me, is super valuable. If I'm thinking about a commercial enterprise and I'm working in a business and all this stuff, because I know if I've got a business unit that's hemorrhaging cash, I'm going to do something about it. That's my concern here. I don't think we're going to do anything about it. If we do this study and we realize that hangars are not profitable, does that mean we're never going to build any more? And if we do the study and figure out that they are profitable, are we immediately going to start building hangars because they're profitable? And the same thing with fuel, dispensing fuel or tie downs or all of these different services. We have to do this stuff. So I'm not sure if we find out that something is not necessarily profitable, if we're going to have, I don't even want to say, I was going to say the discipline. That's actually not the right way of looking at it. If we've got any option with regard to what we do about it. So, and I did, when I looked at the previous reports that were done, to me, I guess I was hoping for even a more granular approach to this, which I realize would be much more difficult with regard to some smaller projects that we work on, not necessarily just on the fuel. Because I think when I think of these larger projects, I don't know how we can make any decisions with regard to changing them or not offering these services, because they are, in fact, what constitutes an airport. so these are the kinds of things, like I look at it and I think it's really, really interesting. And I'm hoping in the rest of our discussion tonight, maybe some people can offer some examples of something tangible that we might actually change that would have a significant impact on the numbers that we're looking at, as opposed to like, well, we're going to raise our tie down fees by $5 a night. It's like, well, to an airport that pulls in $7 million in property taxes in a year, adding $5 to the cost of a tie down over the year is probably not going to be that significant. So I'll just leave it there and just say that I'm hopeful that in this discussion that I'll see some examples that will make me think that we really would have some good actionable outcomes from this that could change things for the better.
Okay, good commentary. Mary?
I see great value in it. I think it's truthful. It gives you real numbers. And, we have a lot of pressure to build more hangars, and were we charging the right amount for them? And this will go to Jeff in terms of, I think it started out once with a hangar is a hangar, and we changed that to a hangar is not necessarily the same hangar. And so we need to be conscious of that in this new study. We have very different types of hangars. And it's in terms of business lines, to actually know what they're costing you, what you're making your money, and what they're costing you in operating costs is a very valuable piece of information. Yes, and we will subsidize pieces of it out of property taxes. But then those become the decision points. But to actually know truth before you make those decisions is valuable. And so I'm very much a proponent of finding these allocations, finding out what, when this was first done in 2006, we were getting $2 million in property taxes. And in 10, it was, maybe 3 million somewhere, but I don't have
4 million. Yeah.
4 million. Well, now we're getting 7 million, and it's only going up with housing values out of the, crazy. And so then it tells us what we should subsidize to what level, and what we really do have available for other uses. And I think it's very valuable to do. I have some questions for Jeff. I mean, I'm assuming it goes, then I have questions. I won't throw out all my questions yet because, right now you got one definite yes that let's do it. I like both parts of it and I like the part that we're going to be comparing to other resort communities, because the last time we did this cost comparison, we included Stead and Auburn, and we're the market. We are the market, and we are compared to other resort markets. And that's what we really need to be cognizant of when we're setting our rates, fees, and charges. So I'm going to hold back and ask him specific questions about this if it appears that we do have enough votes to say yes, do it.
Okay. Kat?
I agree with Mary. I think it's long overdue. And in addition to the points that she made, I think it helps us tell a story, and it helps us maybe defend decisions. I mean, to the extent that people in the community are saying, our tax dollars are helping fund overflight of our house, then we can come back and say, well, actually, your tax dollars are doing this, and all this other revenue is funding the flights over your house. So not that it makes them feel better, but maybe it makes them feel that, they're not funding their own nuisance, if you will. But I think it's a great idea. I think there's going to be some great data that comes from this.
Okay, thanks. Rick?
Well, we're doing this choosing my words carefully. Mary's wanted to do this for years, and we've tried to pick away at it, And this is to do it, and I think we ought to do it. But I'm also in agreement with Mr. Diamond that I'm not sure what we'll do with it. Maybe it'll give us great information and we'll change how we do stuff, and maybe we won't. But we will have knowledge about where money's going and what things are costing, so I support it.
Okay, my turn. I think we do know where our money's going, just to comment on what you just said, Rick, because we do an audit every year. Also, on the agenda, it's called Cost Allocation Analysis and FBO Fee Study, but Mary just said cost comparison with neighboring resort communities. So I'm a little unclear what the end product is going to be. And yes, Kevin, thank you for sending us the last one, but that was 11 years ago now. So we're looking at something different. So I'm a little unclear on that. And in general, I'm with David. I'm not really in favor of studying something just to study it, just to put it on the shelf and do nothing with it. And my example of that is in 2016, we went through an ad hoc and we did a economic impact report, and we did nothing with it. I mean, I'm not even sure we talked about it. They presented it and we said, thanks, approved, move on. But we didn't take it anywhere or change our decisions or even promote it. So I'm a little leery of that. And it's not a huge sum of money. You know, it's $35,000, but they all add up. And so I could go either way. I'm not really hugely in favor of doing a study for study's sake. Who wants to go next?
Yeah, did all the board members go?
Yes.
Can I just add one more?
Yeah, go ahead, David.
Add one more thing, because I want to make sure that my wishy-washy perspective on this is as clear as it can be. This is the type of thing to me where not to get the cart before the horse. For example, if the board were making the decision, should we or should we not build more hangars, that part of that decision process would be, let's do a study of what we've done with the hangars so far, where we're at, to find out where are they profitable, are they not profitable, how much tax dollar is required for it. In the context of that, I think that this would be, or something like this is really essential to making an informed decision on that. But what I'm afraid of is that we do the study and we look at the numbers and we think, okay, well, maybe they're different than we expect, or maybe they're what we kind of expect. But the question then just becomes, by the time we have to make a decision on this data, is the data still going to be current? Or will we at that point in time think, well, too bad we don't have updated numbers on this? So maybe the question would be that, is it prudent to do one global study across the entirety of the airport, or is it maybe better, before we go on to this, to maybe put some questions in front of it? Do we want to build more hangars? Is that something we want to talk about this year or next year? And maybe as part of that, we look at a study with regard to this. Do we want to charge more for fuel or less for fuel, or do we want to do away with self-service? If we've got a question that we could actually put in front of this, that we could actually go through and get the data and have the data answer that question, and then as a board take action based on that. I just think it's on the one hand, I don't want to turn it down, because I do love to see data, but I love to see data that in just kind of spurs action, and that action is based on answering a question: do we want to do something or do we not want to do something? That's just my thought on it. So I'm kind of
and I would counter that in terms of, this study is independent of the question, because it's allocating numbers. Because once you ask the question, then you can shade the answers. This is independent, and there's value in that. because then you have real data. I mean, I started pushing on what's the 100, 600, and 800 breakouts, and trying to get a sense of what does the airside cost? What does it cost to operate the airside? What does it cost to operate the land side? And then you have 600, and I mean, and it's all mushed together. Whereas this breaks it out, and we can actually see what does it cost to operate the airside. And any money that we make on the land side, if it moves over into the air side, then it now can stay on the air side. And so I really want us to get a hard sense of air side, land side. Where are we making money? Where are we not making money? And that will inform future decisions. But the previous version, and it also then gives Kevin, when he's presenting a decision point to us, he has real numbers that we've accepted this report, we've accepted its validity, and then when he's saying, this is what these numbers are showing us, and then that helps for us to frame the decision.
Kevin, if I can jump in for a couple?
Please.
To answer, sort of hit some different questions here. One first, to clarify exactly the difference in the two elements of the report. One is the cost allocation study and one is the fee study. So the cost allocation study is looking strictly at the Truckee Airport District, Tahoe Airport District, and the airport itself. It's not looking outwardly at other airports. It is looking at your revenue streams and your cost structures. The fee study is where we go and look at, on a comparative basis, your fee structure and your rates and charges in comparison to other comparable resort studies. So they really are two separate. They don't necessarily overlap because one is taking the revenues and costs, and the other is taking the rates and charges and looking at them in two separate ways. So I hope that answers your question, Teresa.
Yep, thank you.
Director Diamond, I concur with your concern. I am never one, as you might be surprised to hear this from a consultant, I am never one to encourage my clients to do something that they're not going to do something with it. There's no reason for you to waste money on a report that has no value. I hope that anytime we're doing something, we are adding value that helps our clients make good decisions. And that's why I think that at the very beginning of this project, it's so important that we just don't launch forward and do what we did before, but we reach back out to the directors and to the management team to find out what some of those questions are that we do want to try to make sure is included in that analysis. And you may not make any change, but that is a decision by itself. You might decide to change a rate because of the result. And Kevin, or Mary, I believe in the 2000 and after the 2006 one, there were changes in the hangar rates as a result of that study, if I remember correctly. But you can also, and I know, been involved with the airport and the district for quite a few years now. I know there's these political dynamics of your citizens that elect you and that put money into the airport through taxes, and users that are putting money into the airport through user fees, and trying to find that balance of how those monies are being used and are the users being charged an appropriate fair rate for their use of the airport and not, benefiting too much. I mean, they do benefit from the tax dollars. There's no question about that. But, how much are they, and is it a fair balance? This helps with that question and helps you defend that. But I agree, Ms. Director Diamond, that we definitely want to make sure that there are valuable information coming out of this to make decisions, even if those decisions don't result in changes. The other thing, and I think I encouraged this both at 2006 and 2010, to really reduce or eliminate even the need to hire me in these years is to try to find ways to structure your financial reporting systems so that you get some of these answers on a regular annual basis by creating some silos within your financial reporting system of the air side and the land side and the hangars and allocation of costs. It takes a little bit more work on an ongoing basis when you're trying to allocate your expenditures, but it helps you on a regular basis versus what it's now been 11 years since we've last done this. I think if you do these kind of things, especially if you want to compare them to the previous period, which is now 11 years old, it's harder to say, oh, how have I changed? Because there's a lot of other things that have changed over 11 years than just inflation and policy decisions. Hope some of that helps.
Mary, Kevin and Mary, we worked on that runway utilization study, and this is what I'm getting back to is that for me that started coming into focus toward the end when we discovered we should ask specific questions and make sure the report answers our specific questions. And what I'm wondering, would anybody have any objection to maybe before jumping into this, if we had, whether it was an ad hoc or something even less formal than that, if we just came up with 5 or 6 or 10 questions that we would like to make sure we could answer from this report, and that we could put it into the form that we want to know if we should build hangars, and if the report supports X, Y, and Z, we will move forward with this, and if it doesn't, we will not move forward with this. So if we on other related topics there, just so that we kind of had a sense of where we wanted to end up with this with regard to what we were going to do with the data, and also to make sure that Jeff, for you, when you were putting the report together, that you kind of had some guidelines with regard to knowing format wise. These are the specific things they want to be able to answer. They don't want to just like a spreadsheet of like the bottom line is red or the bottom line is black, but that if we had something like that, would people be opposed to that or in favor of that? Would it make a difference?
I wonder, it's like I'm going to hire an accountant to run my books for my company, and I want to have them answer these questions before they do the books. You know, how can I show a big profit? How can I, I mean, you don't want to go into an accounting with, where you want the accounting is legit because it's an accounting, it's following its protocol, it's following GASB. This is that kind of a thing. If you go in with questions, then it's like, can you maybe put this over into that category, and maybe we'll fudge it a little bit here or there, which that doesn't seem legit to me.
Just to clarify and to support a little bit with what Mary's saying, but just to clarify, Director Diamond, I don't think you will get an answer of whether or not you should build more hangars. That is what we call a hangar feasibility study. And we did the last hangar feasibility study for the airport before you made those, and where we're taking future capital costs to build a new hangar and taking that revenue stream and cost stream, and will there be a return on investment? We're not calculating return on investments in this allocation study. We're strictly looking at your revenues and your costs on a per square foot basis, and where do they lie? Are your revenues above or below your costs on a per square foot basis? That doesn't give you enough information to make a decision, should we build more hangars? It's just, do our existing hangars drive a reasonable profit or not?
And to follow up on that, if I could add, maybe, David, to get a little bit where you're going, there are 3 things that this would tell me as a gentleman, and I still have mine right here, right next to me. And yeah, it's old, But the methodology, there's still things in there that I look at, particularly when we're trying to understand what the true costs of something are, because it gives categories that Jeff came up with that are still true. The numbers are all old, but some of the methodology still rings true. But there's three things, and one of them is a policy decision only the board can decide. And when we went through the budget process this summer, there was a lot of interest in trying to understand where our property tax was going. The budget is not a good tool to try and figure that out. And the 100, 600, 800, because of the very allocation requirement that there is to understand that. And so I don't want our budget process to become the place where we try and understand, are we subsidizing or are we making money? Because it really needs to be in a tool like this. So this would answer that question. And if the public asks, are you taking money from my property tax and putting it into the tank of that challenger, this could help us answer that question. Right now, my response is, I don't think so. We've got a very market-driven fee structure that collects revenue, and I can kind of show that there's a substantial amount of revenue coming off the ramp that covers those costs. But I don't have anything like the 2010 study that could actually answer that. The other thing is it does inform our rate setting. And when in 2010, we did go in and adjust rates based on that study. So we were charging 50 cents a gallon for 100 low lead, and it was costing us 56 cents a gallon to sell it. And so over about a 2-year period, we raised our margin from $1 for 50 cents a margin to $1. And still we're very competitive with the local market, where we're trying to make flying affordable for our local pilots, and we do still have affordable 100 low lead fuel. So it did help us inform that. And then, there's also, I think, an error, some transparency to it, where you have this study that you can show the public that that this is what and how money flows through the airport, where the cost and the revenue come from. But some of these are just policy discussions that only the board can decide. How important is it to know where property tax flows? And I know with our board, it varies. The importance of that, I think, may vary. I think we all are very, we all feel that money's sacred. The level of review of it, is, I guess, is subject to individual view of that. And as Teresa mentioned, the audit is incredibly transparent and does show a lot about where our finances and money flow. And any member of the public that really wants to know, that document is available every year. So that's just something I would throw out there, and happy to answer any questions on it. But that's kind of the view I see of the value of the study.
All right, I'll chime in and say, because it's been 11 years, I'm open to doing it, but in general, studying for studying's sake, to put a book on the shelf is not my MO. So in this particular case, I'll go for it. Anyone else?
I think we all know that we use some of the property tax to subsidize airside. But it's a question of what it's for. The tower, is that, they certainly use that for airside, but in theory, we're using the tower to direct airplanes. So is it community, or is it tower? Is it split, or whatever? So maybe we'll get some better ideas on this. So I'm going to vote for it. But it's a question. The property tax does subsidize the airside at this airport. Just a question of how much, and also how you take an expenditure and how do you split it up.
That'll be the big challenge. That's the first part of the allocation.
And it can be very subjective.
Yeah, and you're right. It's looking at FBO versus airside. I mean, it'll break those things out, because I think we all know that the airside is subsidized by property tax. Is the FBO subsidized by property tax? That's a good question.
I think the answer to that is yes. We charge them so little.
And just as a clarification, and I don't remember which director mentioned this, but I have the audit up, if it's the same one that was being discussed. Audits are very good in saying what revenues you have and what operating expenses you have, but it doesn't allocate them by silos. You don't know what revenues are being used for which operating expenses and which capital expenses. And that is what this report is designed to do, is to flow every single revenue stream into a operating cost silo and allocate it accordingly. Yes, there is some subjectiveness to it. If you look at our 2010 report, we work really hard to try to minimize that subjectiveness by quantifying aircraft operations, gallons, square footage, employee hours by different function. So we try to take as much subjectiveness out of the process as possible. I'm not naive that there is not some, but we try to do our best.
I mean, and you do this at lots of other airports. So
Yes.
you have developed a sense of that percentage of fair attribution,
Yes.
you know.
Sounds like we have consensus on doing it. And
So
maybe, Mary, you can go offline with him and talk about priorities?
That would be, you know, where I can throw my questions by Kevin, you know, make sure, because it is a new world. It's a new airport than what was at that time, you know, and we have the WAB and we have ADSB and we have the tower and we have extra staff and all sort of things, you know, and your process.
So maybe we should do an ad hoc. Because when we did the economic impact study, we had an ad hoc. Just a thought.
Yeah, I mean, did you have an ad hoc before? I know Kath was very, was she, I think it's.
No, I was on it. It was me and Lisa did the economic impact study in 2016.
Did you have one in 2010? Was there two
We did
board
one.
members that worked with you, Jeff?
On an economic impact study.
Just a thought. I mean, I'm totally open if you guys want to do that. If anybody wants to do it with Mary, volunteering you.
Yeah. Is that a
negative?
I think it's appropriate.
I'm just saying I don't want to do it.
Okay.
Sounds like
I
David
think
and Mary
it's totally
involved.
appropriate because you guys can come back to us with succinct reporting rather than hashing it out for 30, 45 minutes.
Okay. Yes.
Form an ad hoc committee, yeah. And just so everyone's clear, the ad hoc committee will direct the process. We as staff will be support to help that, but the ad hoc committee is directing it. Okay.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So what do you need, Kevin?
There's a sample motion in the board book if anyone wants to make that.
I move to approve the proposal from AMGCG to complete the financial allocation analysis per the attached proposal.
And then I put it there,
Are we
sorry.
going to include the FBO study, fee study? Why not?
Yes.
I would like that included.
And authorize the GM to sign the agreement not to exceed $35,000.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Any public comment?
Oh, can you add to the motion the ad hoc committee?
We can do a second motion for that.
I wouldn't recommend, we don't need to do the ad hoc committee by motion. That can actually make it not an ad hoc committee. So I'd recommend that just by consensus. Yeah.
You sound different, Brett.
Yes. A little bit switcheroo. So.
Did Lauren say there was no public comment?
Yeah, no public comment.
Okay, then let's do a roll call.
Vice President Diamond?
Yes.
Director Hetherington?
Yes.
President Odette?
Yes.
Director Rolfe?
Yes.
Director Stevens?
Yes.
And we're not making a motion for an ad hoc. We're just by consensus saying Mary and David will be on an ad hoc for this.
We'll assure the minutes reflect that ad hoc committee was agreed to by consensus.
Okay, and I'm gonna say now that we are done with this one, let's take a 5-minute break.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff.
Bye-bye.
5 minutes, so it's 6:49. We'll be back.
say Elder City?
Okay, you guys.
You're mute on, Rick.
While she's getting the shot, get one yourself.
She's getting her second. I'm too young.
That's Odette's line.
I've got other issues that you're not aware of that would get me in line, but I'll skip that for now.
Okay.
Anyway, let's move on. Let's go to number 11.
Right. This is the TTSA, TTAD land exchange discussion. So I wanted to bring this forward. As many of you are aware, maybe different levels of awareness, the district's been in actually discussion since the late 90s with the TTSA to exchange some property that we have north of the airport, below the bluff. We have a map we can put up in a minute if people need it. And exchanging that for some property that's at the end of runway 29, the approach end of runway 11 on the north side. It's kind of property between the runway approach and Riverview Park. I don't want to spend a lot of time on this, but in December, I actually asked our consultants to stop working on this project because I knew that there was some board concern as the board dynamics changed a little of whether or not this was a good idea, and we were spending a lot of money on NEPA compliance with archaeological requirements with the FAA, and I don't want to spend that money if we're not going to do it. From a staff perspective, we are not personally attached to this project. There's lots of things we can work on. We don't need to work on this, but if there is an interest in the board at this time to continue with that land exchange, then I just wanted to bring that up today. We have a couple of options. If everyone is if you feel you want to cease, work on it, we can talk about that now. If you want to have agendized for a later meeting where we get into much more detail on it, we could do that. But I just wanted to get it on the agenda for some discussion.
Yeah. Well, David, you're first.
To me, it's another cart before the horse thing. I do feel like there are creative things we could do with that land, and I would like to know for certain that those options are not available to us. But mostly, we just last time talked about the master plan, and to me, if we work on the master plan and the master plan says we need one parcel versus another parcel, to me that should drive this decision. I don't feel like we should make that decision now and then try to fit that into the master plan. So I'm not in favor of moving forward with this. I think we need to have more discussion about what we could do with that, what we're going to do with the master plan, and then decide after that.
Mary?
I'm not in favor of continuing. I think that this parcel has more value. Back in 05, 06, we talked about it for a business park. And I still think that you're never going to make West River pretty. I think that this would be a great place for a business park. We have a new appraisal. I think it would be awesome to get the town and the airport and TTSA in negotiation for acquisition of that, because TTSA has said that they won't give access. There's an easement issue, but I think that it is or we could develop our own business park and generate revenue. I would like it to go to sleep.
Kat?
I agree with David and Mary. And I remember when this came up a few years ago when I was on ACAT and working with the trails folks, and it made some sense at the time because the swap would allow us to build more trail around the airport on our land instead of having to go on TTSA. But now it's kind of moot because so many other trails have been built that are connectors that it doesn't really seem like it's that beneficial to us.
Okay. Rick?
I disagree with the last three board members. I think that we should proceed. Gosh, we started this 3 years ago, an ad hoc with Lisa Wallace and John Jones, and Jim Morrison got involved, and we went round and round and round. And there are benefits, and they're listed in the staff report. And I mean, I think we should do it. We've got the tree issue. We've got the end of 202. Mary's concerned about doing this will give us rights to or ability to build hangars on the other side of 29. I don't think that's an issue for me, at least in my lifetime. So I think we should do it. The staff report had the staff agreeing with it for the aviation reasons. So I think this is a bad decision to say no.
Okay, I'll chime in and say the ad hoc was in my last 4-year term, and they came up with the recommendation to do it, and they did the work. We did the work. So David, I hear you, but on the other hand, we either can't move fast enough to get it done in one set of directors' terms, right? Because we already did the work. It just happened to be before. So I think we should do it. So if we had to vote right now and you guys all are holding your positions, I guess it's a no.
Yeah.
Any other comments or questions?
I just have this on as a discussion item. I probably would put it on as an action item for the next meeting, and you can take a formal action, because we have an agreement with TTSA, and there's a provision there where we can cancel. So I would just get that ready for an action item on the next agenda, and then if the board consensus is to put it on hold. And just as Rick mentioned, from a staff perspective, I'll just add ours is we do recommend moving forward with it. We think there's more benefits than more pros than cons to continue it, but we understand, and we work for you, and if there's not a will to continue with it, we will move on to something else.
Teresa, we need to find another vote.
All right, well, we've got a month to do it. You can't both talk to the same people.
Kevin, can you not get a standing agreement to trim those trees as needed instead of every time it taking 6 months?
There's a possibility. In preliminary conversations, they weren't real big on that, but I haven't talked to LaRue about it for a while. They're more interested in the transfer and want that done. So I can ask about that. The trees are important. That's a big thing for us. That from a staff perspective, we like to get control of those. But yeah, I can check on and ask about that again. But that's just one of a list of things that we think that is benefits the airport.
They're in the middle of a master plan going from 26,000 connections to 52,000 connections, and they want this as disposal field, and that concerns me.
Well, they're not using it as a spray field.
Well, not a spray field. They would just put like giant leach field in. It would be used as a disposal field.
And injection is what.
Do we have the infrastructure to double our sewer connections? It reaches every aspect of this whole entire region in terms of fire, in terms of evacuation, in terms of roads, in terms of it's beyond just
Well, is holding down doubling the sewer connection the airport board's concern, or should it be the town of Truckee and the county of Placer and Nevada County?
We're all in our silos. And we need to be thinking regionally. We need to be thinking what's good for the entire region.
Well, we were voted in to represent the airport district, not everybody. That's like county supervisor. Mary for county supervisor. I'm all for it. Anyway, so we're continuing this.
Yeah, let me continue. But I'll just summarize. It seems like there's consensus that 3 are not interested in pursuing the item. 2 are. What I will do is put this on as an action item at the next agenda with the appropriate language that references back to the termination clause of the agreement, which was approved in 2019.
What you just said is accurate as of right now.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, and editorially, it seems to me it took forever to negotiate this. Am I correct in that, Kevin? It seems that the ad hoc committee.
The property exchange agreement finally got approved May of 2019, and then we've been in the process of, with the land release, which we mentioned would take a year to year and a half without significant issues. We did run into an archaeological issue down there that was the process we were in the fall to get that resolved, be able to resolve that with the FAA, and that's when obviously there's an election, and so we put a pause on it to allow you to have this conversation before we spent more. I mean, we're 6 digits in studies and engineering design, and we haven't spent that much yet, but that's what it would cost by the time we were done to get all the environmental and everything else done, the appropriate FAA paperwork along with appraisals and other things, the land transaction to get it done.
You should have gotten it done faster, Kevin.
We worked very hard to get it done as soon as we could, but we can only move it at the pace of the FAA, and that's the tough part of it. And these kinds of projects are not priorities for them at the airport district office. We typically have to go through the director to get them to take it from the bottom of the stack and make it higher. We were successful on the NEPA side and getting the NEPA work done, but that's kind of where it's at right now.
Okay. You have what you need then, yes?
Yes, that's what I need.
Awesome. Let's move on to number 12, monthly flight procedures program update.
That'll be Hardy. Give that update.
Okay, thank you. This is just an update based on our last meeting, and we agreed again to bring you forward a monthly summary of the activity in between the board meeting and the next board meeting. And so we have had a lot of activity around this project. We were kind of on the precipice, and when we got some board direction based on the workshop, it allowed us to trigger some of these elements and get started. So I'm not going to go over the staff report in great detail because you've read that, but essentially we had our kickoff meeting for the flight procedures consultant team today. It went very well. It took about an hour and a half. We talked about the submission requirements, all of our priorities around the departure and arrival procedures, the timeline associated with the adoption of those procedures. So that was a good meeting. We're working on the microsite, the website, finishing the design review. And again, we're going to bring the microsite back to the board with all of the support elements wrapped inside the microsite so you can see it one final time before we go live with it. So don't think that we're going to engage or release any of the elements independently. You'll get a chance to see it from a kind of an overview global perspective. And then I wanted to show you a couple of exhibits. These are pretty good, and I like them, but I'm just going to show you these really quick, and then we can move on. I'm going to share my screen briefly with you. So this is the IFR impact exhibit we created. And this is just a way to quantify the numerical representation of the current IFR operations per day. There will be another exhibit that would be a toggle feature where you toggle it to the future condition and you would see the numbers change. So for example, this is illustrating the Truck 4 flight path impact numerically. When you toggle that, you would see the other proposed departures, like the one going out to the west over Dogger Lake, and you'd see the numbers on this existing Truck 4 decrease, and you'd see the numbers of IFR departures on the westbound departure increase. So this is one of the exhibits we're trying to develop. And again, you'll have an ample opportunity to review this before we go public with it. The next exhibit is the existing impact map and the future impact map. So this is a more general artistic type of exhibit. It's not based on actual data. So this shows the current basic impact of arrivals and departures. So we have this map, and it shows obviously the red is the heavy, the orange is frequent, yellow is moderate, and green's occasional. And then we can look at what we think the future condition is going to be with our new procedures. So you can see there's a lot more dispersionary activity. You'll see less red, but more orange and yellow. And you can see that the area to the truck 4 over Prosser is greatly reduced, but you have this enhanced area to the west on the Cigna departure. You also have the two tails over on the eastern portion of the exhibit. So you have the arrival from Lake Tahoe that's adding a little bit of overflight, and you have the proposed departure from 1-1. And you also have a reduction of the Sierra Meadows impact because you're adding traffic from different areas. So these are some of the exhibits that we're still working on. We're going to put those into that microsite container, and then we're going to bring that whole thing back to you for adoption. So that's essentially the update I have for you for now, unless there's any questions.
I think that was great. But David, you want to go? Any questions?
The only question I had on that, Hardy, was that was just IFR, or that's VFR and IFR?
Which exhibit? The numerical exhibit?
No, not the numerical. Obviously, that was IFR, but I'm talking about the heat maps that we just saw.
They're IFR and VFR, and there's a bunch of other pieces like VFR dispersionary activity going on, but we tried to keep it simple enough so that you could show it to somebody who didn't know a lot about flight procedures, and you could describe, here's roughly what's happening today, here's roughly what we anticipate tomorrow. So it is oversimplified, but it's kind of by design.
And just one other thing, and maybe you don't feel this way or nobody else feels this way. If I look at that heat map, it suggests to me that all of the departures are going to be used at the same level or the same frequency.
Yeah.
Like the 1-1 stuff looks like it will be as used as Cigna. And I think in the rest of the narrative, in the materials that you've shown us, you expect very much the opposite of that.
Yeah, that's a great point. And one of the things I struggle with is if you reduce the overflight in certain areas to enough, what you notice is it all looks the same. So it was kind of, we intentionally put that in there so that at least we can point to somebody and say, there will be activity in this general vicinity. But again, it's artistic and not data driven. So we really struggle with that because the original renditions I got actually had a very light piece going out on the Cigna portion. And then they had almost none on the 1-1. But I said, if somebody looks at this, it's so almost imperceptible. We're not going to be able to describe the change to them. So it is, again, it's an oversimplification, but we can make it lighter. We can make them lighter or even change them, for example, for 1-1 and say, this is a 1-1 low use case scenario map, and then there's a 1-1 heavy. But happy to modify it if we want to put more detail in there.
Whatever you and the design team, I don't want to try to override that because it's going to get messy if there's too many inputs on it. But I just wondered that for myself because I thought if somebody were looking at that, might they be confused by the narrative having told them that they don't expect much traffic off of 1-1 and that this graphic showing that it looks like there's a lot of traffic off of 1-1. That was
it's definitely.
Explained or whatever, yeah. But
it's something to think about. Sometimes graphically depicting that is more challenging than what we had thought, but we can certainly change it or lighten it up enough so that it's still perceptible. Or maybe we could change the iconography so we can make it a line instead of a shade or something. But I'll talk to Katie about it.
Whatever they think, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
My only thought is some distinction between arrival and departures. I think, it all blended together. I think, the heat map, they're such big wide lines. I think to some extent tightening up, there might be value in that. But maybe labeling A and D, or something, because different entities. You're not off 1-1 and make a hard U-turn, right? That's only an arrival. And the new coming in over Brockway are arrivals. Or one of them is a departure too, so thinking about that.
Yeah, no problem. We can certainly add a way to delineate arrivals and departures on each map, so no problem there.
Awesome. Kat?
I don't have anything to say. It looks really good. Easy to
Awesome.
understand.
Rick?
We discussed last meeting going to talk to the FAA about procedures to see if they were even feasible. What are you doing on that, Hardy?
The meeting we had with the consultant team today, indeed confirmed everything that they've outlined in the assessment is feasible. The FAA may change, which they do, change their direction, change their guidance, both written and nonverbal decision-making that they use to approve procedures. But we essentially, what's in that assessment is acceptable by the written standard that the FAA has published today, and we expect to carry that through. The timeline is also slightly accelerated from what we've been discussing 18 to 36 months. It's still 18 to 36 months, but the consultant, Alec and Rich, are pretty confident that they will have some word for me on the level of acceptability of these procedures in 6 months. So we're solidly inside that 2021 window to get feedback from the FAA.
And that's what we wanted, is feedback.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. Well, I think it looks great. So.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Nice work. Any other board member thoughts or questions? You can nod.
No.
Okay, any public comment?
No public comment.
Okay, let's move on to number 13, Kevin.
This is our standing item we have every month just to talk about future agenda priorities. Before I say anything, though, David has been bumped twice on this item. We had a little brief conversation on it, but I know a couple of times David had some information that he wanted to share on his proposal. I'm not sure that we ever were able to spend adequate time on it, but I want to make sure, David, is there anything else you wanted to cover on your proposal that you put forward?
Yeah, it was. The original point to it, and the reason, one of the reasons we continued is because it came up that night, Teresa, where your power went off and you were gone, so we didn't want to make any decisions without you there. Is just that there were basically two points of it. Was the second meeting, and there was an option which would address something Rick brought up earlier, that the second meeting could actually be the following day. We could also, by the Brown Act permits us to continue a meeting to within, I think it's 72 hours. So we could optionally do something like that, make the decision that if we are at the 4-hour or the 5-hour point, that we decide, do we want to continue on that evening or continue to the next day for that. And my concern about it was that, having watched other board meetings in the past, agenda items toward the end of the meeting often get glossed over. They don't get the same attention that the agenda items at the beginning of the meeting do, which I can understand why. And the second part of it was that we would take complex topics, like what kind of we did with the flight procedures, and not try to put them in a standard meeting. Like, always have a separate meeting to discuss something like that. Now, and since then, if we had some housekeeping that we could do during the course of a meeting, like, for example, like I get on the reports and stuff, I get my questions answered ahead of time so that we're not doing them in the meeting. If there are reports that are in the on the agenda, and the public can see these reports and we can see these reports, or if they're videos, like when we're going through flight procedures and that maybe we don't need to go over them again in the meetings, that we can just, does anybody have any questions about it, and then bring it up from that. Just whatever we can to kind of tighten up the meetings. Interestingly, tonight, I think this meeting went pretty well tonight, so this doesn't seem like one of those meetings that was kind of like dragging on. But anyway, that was my point to it. Just really to give every topic that we address the attention and focus that I think it should have.
Okay, thank you. Mary?
Yeah, I think, it sounds pretty complex to go to a standard 2 meetings a month, and I don't think we want to do that. But I think the idea of when we have something that we really need to work on, I think having a special meeting or workshop is very useful on 1 or 2 subjects, just as we've done here in January and February, especially since we're Zooming, so we don't have to coordinate everybody's schedule. I think that, leaving it open so that we can call a special is awesome. And I think it's better. 4 hours even gets long. I think a 3 hour is kind of cool. But thanks for bringing it up.
Can I ask one question to Josh real quick? Maybe Lauren would know too. Does it sound like the state is going to allow us to have the option to do Zoom meetings after the summer? Not that I think our board meetings probably, I think we all agree, need to be in person. But if we wanted to do little workshops, spend a couple hours going over an item, are they still going to allow us to do those via Zoom?
So there's one, Lauren, you jump in if you've heard differently. I'm aware of at least one bill that's pending that would allow you to do Zoom meetings going forward. But that bill only allows that if there is a declared state or local state of emergency or some other social distancing recommendation. So the short answer to your Kevin is unless that bill is expanded, no, once COVID's over. And assuming there isn't another emergency. But what I would say is even under the traditional Brown Act rules, I think we will have a little bit more flexibility with doing these sort of meetings, because even under the existing teleconference rules, we can have a majority of the board participate remotely as long as they're located within the jurisdiction of the district. The only thing that directors would have to be comfortable with is we need to post the location that you're participating in. So, for example, if you're participating in your house, we have to post your home address on the agenda, as well as technically that's a public meeting site. So if a member of the public wished to participate from the meeting from your living room, they could do that. But that assumes that the bill isn't expanded. Maybe I'm tilting at windmills, but I really am hopeful that the legislature will see that allowing these Zoom meetings actually increases public participation, especially if we have a public location going forward. But we just have to wait and see how that ultimately shakes out.
Well, when is COVID going to be over?
It's not on the agenda.
I understand that, but I think having Zooms is important because we've had board meetings where directors have had to call in, and I think calling in is less acceptable. Even if 4 directors are in the boardroom, if one could be on Zoom, in June I'll be in New Jersey, and I sure hope we still can do Zoom.
Yeah, so under the current rules, we can continue doing Zoom the way we do it now, as long as social distancing is recommended by the health department. So, knock on wood, it's always dangerous to look forward how things are going to develop with this, but I'm pretty confident June will still be okay. But maybe 2022 or something, then in your situation, Director Stevens, you would need to post the location in New Jersey where you're participating from, but you still would be able to participate through video conference or remotely.
Yeah, everything I've heard and read is more in 2022, this sort of being in question, not necessarily 2021. And yeah, we need to still be under some sort of like emergency health and safety order of some kind.
Thank you. I just asked, just because I think, these workshops, if we're able to jump on, a Zoom call and be able to workshop something for 2 or 3 hours, at random times when noticed, but, at different times of the month or week, I think it can help shorten these meetings. One of the things I do when I build the rolling agenda, which you'll have a copy of, is I'm always trying to look at about a 3 to 3.5 hour meeting. And that I think is about the most effective. I've been working for cities where we would go 6, 7, 8 hours, and David's right. We've all experienced that after 7 hours in a board meeting, we're not super effective. So if we can keep them to 3.5 hours, complementing that with periodic workshops where we can work through some of the more technical items, I think we'll be okay. And looking, forward on the agenda, I think that system would work. We're also making sure, trying to get you all some of the more things that are. I think the next thing is the land management plan. Things that are multiple 100 pages or 200 pages. We're trying to send you that a month before the meeting, to give you more time to look over those, and also opportunities to meet with consultants individually, ask questions. And so you'll see that for March. We have the land management plan. I think you may have already gotten that, but I'll check with Hardy. So I think with those things, we're going to be okay. So just last thing, and I'll shut up, is for March, the things coming up. I've got the land release action item that is new. I just added that to March. Also, scope for allocation. I think that the ad hoc committee probably could have a scope working with Jeff Coleman for March. We're going to try and give you an update, and it'll happen either March or April. But the Cessna JTA program, we're just going to give you a program update on how that plane's performing revenue-wise, hours of use, noise comments, things like that. The ATC tower contract, that will be a March or April item. Hardy, you thinking that may be March?
I think it's going to be April.
Okay. We actually had a meeting on that after we posted the agenda, and we think April will be the meeting that the board will be able to look at the vendor that staff is going to recommend. You'll get all the proposals, but we'll give you a recommendation on how to move forward with our ATC tower service contract, which expires in end of May or June. The infamous momentary switch policy. So we'll have that on the March agenda also. You're going to get that early.
Wait,
let me back
that's
up.
on your
Sorry.
GM report, Kevin.
What was that?
That was on your GM report, and we're not there yet.
It's on the rolling agenda too, which is part of this item. So okay. I'll hit that. We're actually going to move that to April. So because we want to do a little more outreach with the pilot community to make sure that they all know that this thing is out there. So that'll get moved to April. And then just look at other big items that'll take a lot of time, and that's really it. We'll have the RFP for salary and comp. So that's your March meeting. So I'm just putting that out there. Is there anything else any board member wants added to that meeting or taken off that meeting for March?
I'm still sort of on the bandwagon that it's Kat's turn to comment. Rick interjected. Kevin responded. It's Kat's turn.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay.
Still on 13, right?
Yes, we are still on 13. What do you think about 2 meetings a month, or
I don't think we need
initial questions.
2 meetings a month, but I think we can identify the ones that take a lot of time and brain power, and we don't serve well to have at the end of a 6-hour meeting. So yeah, I think moving forward, just do. I mean, right now it feels like we're having 2 meetings a month because we've had 2 meetings a month.
Since you got here.
Yeah, exactly. But
you only started that after you got on the board.
Oh, you just wanted to meet with me twice.
It was David, actually.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, I think David has some really good points, and I think very much in favor, especially if we can do remote. We might feel differently in 2022 when it's not so easy. But
so, Rick, did you have anything else to add?
No, I interrupted it. I apologize. So I
We're
won't
just
say
out of order.
anything more.
It's fine. I got my big girl pants on over here tonight. My comments. I have 2 comments. One is a suggestion that you guys, just springing it on you, but just a thought. When I was on the board at the fire department, all of the, what were they called? Not the chief, but the under chiefs had to come and report, and they were on the agenda every time. And what they would do is send us the board book, and the administrative person would bring us this much paper, on the Friday before the meeting, and we had to review it. And so when we got to the meeting, all they would say is, "You have my report. Do you have any questions?" Which saved an infinite amount of time because we didn't have to put it on screen and go through everyone, and it's our job to read it, and all that information is available to the public as well. So I'm not sure that we need to do the video production of everybody's report. That would be a suggestion of mine, to shorten it up a little bit. And then the other thing was, I like your idea, I think it was David's idea, of carrying it over in a certain number of hours, because we're all right here right now. We can all look at our calendar and say, I can do 3:00 tomorrow for an hour, right? Or whatever. So that might be easier than doodling it and agendizing it if we do have to run over on anything. My 2 thoughts. Any feedback on the report one?
I agree.
I think it makes sense.
Agreed.
Mary?
Actually, if I could just add to that, if staff has presented, if someone on staff has presented a report and that staff person does feel like they need to add something live, I wouldn't object to that. But you're right that if we've read the reports, we should just jump to the discussion.
And there is an expectation that we read the reports and do the homework.
Exactly.
So can I ask a question on that?
Yes.
So you're referring to things like the safety report and the communications report and the
Correct. As much as I love to see Stacy, it would save us all time, including her. And she'd have to be around for questions if we had them. But
I'm happy to do that.
You've read my report. Do you have any questions? Is very specific.
We've done some of that in the past, and then we've kind of gotten instruction that some of those things you wanted more detail on. But we're happy to, make those reports as, it's in the packet. Any questions, we can do it that way.
Cool. Let's do that.
I have a question for Josh, because you do a lot of these sort of meetings, and in terms of public interaction, or do you have any opinion on that one way or the other? I mean, I'm in for it as a great idea, but I'm also aware of a lot of public doesn't look at the board book, and they do tune in to what's happening. So I'm just curious from lots of other boards, what's your thoughts?
I think this is one where it's about half and half on agencies on how they approach this, and I think for some agencies, Director Hetherington, to your point, it is an opportunity for staff to really go through for the public sort of the high points of their of what's going on, but it does take time, and you can go through. So what, just in my personal non-legal opinion, what I think is a good way to do it, because I tend to like, not having to go through the whole report, because I think, that's why it's there, is so everyone can read it in advance. But, in addition to saying, does anyone have any questions? If there is something that the public may be especially interested in, giving the staff person an opportunity to say, might happy to answer any questions. There's one issue I think the public may benefit from, and just give them an opportunity to give a 30-second spiel or something on that. But that's just my personal opinion.
That kind of makes sense, and to try it out, see if we start getting people going, what's happening. But I think it's a good way to address it.
Perfect. Any other comments or thoughts on this one from the board? Nod. Okay, any public comment?
No public comment.
All right, general manager's report, and this is record efficiency.
So,
let's roll.
I'm going to try out the new system. Are there any comments on the general manager's report?
That's good. It's really good.
I had one. So, in terms of the Hertz being potentially wanting to bid on the new RFP, I would hope that they would make good on the rent that they have paid if we're going to issue them to let them have that space again.
Yeah, no, I would agree. I've had that conversation with them. Matter of fact, I got irritated on the phone with them when they were a little upset that they had missed the deadline to submit on the RFP. We had sent it to them, certified mail. And then I said, you guys haven't had anyone in there for 6 months, and you haven't paid your rent, So they said, well, okay, then they kind of talked about how they were, in bankruptcy and trying to solve some problems. But I'm very hopeful that Avis and Hertz will both submit something on it. And yes, we want the place staffed. We want cars there. We want them renting cars, and they need to get current, which
Right.
we're working through that. And we're also part of some, not litigation, but legal work that Peter Kirsch is doing on behalf of a bunch of airports with the Hertz bankruptcy, and we're in there too, trying to get our money.
As a commercial real estate developer, landlord, etc. Yeah, okay, I'd like to get the money, but they're also, if they're coming out of bankruptcy, they're one of the best providers, and we want the best company going forward.
Yeah.
And it did happen in COVID. Granted, they had too much debt. So yes, let's get the money, but yes, let's make the best deal for the airport from today onward.
Agree. You'll get that agreement hopefully next month. The RFPs come in middle of March, and I'm hoping to have that in front of you March or April, depending on negotiations. But I'm very confident we'll have somebody in the other space.
And I think this bike share thing is a cool idea.
Totally agree.
Placer County is leading the charge on it this time, which is much more appropriate than us being the institutor
Yes.
of it. But I think we're going to have electric bikes back at the airport so people can get around and get to downtown and other things. So,
Love it.
yeah, that's all I had for my GM report.
Nice.
If there's any other questions?
I do not have any. Anyone else? Any public comment on the GM report?
No public comment.
Fantastic. Any board member? Oh,
Kevin,
go ahead.
I thought you wanted some report on the ad hoc committee meeting with the TTCF on Monday.
Yes, if you're the ad hoc committee, if you'd like to report on that, and we can do that. And I might, based on kind of our conversation, I might adjust the agenda a little bit so that these ad hoc committees come up as a standing item somewhere else on the agenda, so we can get through them a little quicker. But that'd probably be a good idea, Rick, to talk about the meeting we had with the community.
Just very, very briefly, Kat and I met with you and 3 members of the TTCF, Stacy, and 2 board members, 1 president, Hannah Sullivan and Kristen York. And we basically said we would like to get a proposal from you. And they asked for some feedback. And we told them that we're going to have to go out and offer this to the public for other people to propose. And, I think they're very interested in making a proposal, but they want to have some guidelines on what the job is. And it's up to Kevin's going to be writing that, and Kat now will edit it.
Yes. Mark Lamb is helping me with that. We're going to have that back in front of the ad hoc committee.
Awesome. Thank you guys for doing that.
And then I'll add on the housing JPA. I'm going to start including the general manager's report from Emily Vitus, who runs that, so you can kind of get a little better exposure as to the things that we're working on as a JPA, so that you can see there is a lot of good activity and we're getting some momentum.
Awesome. Okay, do I need public comment again on this?
I believe
Probably.
I have no public comment.
All righty. Board member announcements?
I have one. I am going to miss the May meeting, so stack it, huh? No, I have the opportunity to hike down in the Grand Canyon, and somebody else has a permit, and that's when it is. I have never missed a meeting in, I'm 14 years, but even with the broken tib fib, I've been here, I've been on ad hocs, but I'm going to
You've earned it.
I've earned it.
Very cool. I'm jealous.
Mm-hmm. Anyone else? Since we're on Zoom and on video, we can do this. Okay. Do I need public comment on board member announcements? Probably not.
No, you're good.
Okay. Schedule for upcoming meetings. We can all see that. And I think that's it. Motion to adjourn.
Adjourn.
I'll second.
All in favor? I guess we need roll call.
Yeah, Vice President Diamond.
Yes.
Director Hetherington.
Yes.
President Odette,
Yes.
Director Rolfe,
Yes.
Director Stevens.
Yes.
It was a 3-hour board meeting. Congratulations. Thank you.
3 hours.
Well done,
Because we had a
Teresa.
5-minute break.
Excellent.
All right. Thanks, you guys. See you
Thank you all.
next month.
See ya.
Done.
Bye.